can dance if you want to. You can leave your friends behind. But if your friends don't dance, well, they're no friends of mine. Hey, what do we want to? Okay, hello everyone. Good to see y'all. I'm going to go get a Diet Pepsi so I can stay awake. But we're going to live, laugh, love through tonight. Probably going to be on only for 2 hours because I'll probably take a break in between because I'm buying Taylor Swift tickets. At least to the best of my ability, I will be buying Taylor Swift tickets. Let's see if we can get... If you're being reasonable and a good debater, then yeah, we are. Slay. Who'd you seem to be last night? So no issues. Nothing personal. Okay, we got 8 people in here. Let's get the ball rolling, because I want to have a good live today. I have some eyeliner that I need to put on for going to sleep. I have some mascara. We're going to have a good time. I got my can, and we're going to do some debates. So guest requests are on. If you're new, want to talk to me, please do. We're going to wait a little second for more guests to go. How are you today, Will? I'm doing well. Good. That's very good, Letpot. How you doing today, Will? Doing really, really well. Okay, gorgeous girls, join the live. Gorgeous girls, send likes so we can get a bigger live going. And gorgeous girls, watch the live. So yeah, how's everyone doing? Okay, we got almost 200 people on here. We can get likes going. We can get to 10k likes really quickly if we get 200 people in here. Send likes like your life depends on it, because that will make a more interesting live for everyone, right? Because that means we get more interesting people. Okay. Once I put this on, I'll get my first guest up here, but let's keep sending likes until we get our first guest up here so we can talk. Okay. This guy's... Gorgeous girls, let's go. Keep sending likes, everyone. 10k likes.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Just really tired. I had a long day.
It's fair enough. Would you send a guest request to disagree on?
Anti-penalty.
Gorgeous. So why are you pro-death penalty, I guess?
Because, well, if you think about it, well, as of right now, someone that kills, like, their entire family with no remorse gets the death penalty. What would happen if they didn't? Would they just get life in prison?
Sure.
But that's really technically not setting an example for people that want to do it but can't and don't have, excuse my language, but don't have the balls to do it.
Okay, so I'll ask you a serious question. We'll try and understand this logic, but then we'll go to actually check reality, because there's numbers on this. But really sit with me. Do you think that a person that would murder their whole entire family is going to sit and say, I'll murder my whole entire family if I only get life in prison, but I'm not going to do it if I go to jail? Do you really think that's the calculus that is going on in mass murderers' heads?
No, not really, but it puts more of, a fear into them of what could happen if they did it.
Yeah. So we can actually look at the data, and the data makes this really, really clear. There is no effect, right? Who cares if they're more afraid? They actually don't commit at lower rates. So when we compare places with the death penalty to places not, places prior to the death penalty and places post-death penalty, right, we see basically no effect on the likelihood and rates of violent crimes, murder, mass murder, right? By and large, violent crimes are motivated by economic and personal reasons. The punishment isn't going to change those economic and personal circumstances. So there is a change if there is no punishment versus if there is any punishment. Change if that punishment is nominal, right? If it's a fine. But once you go into the absolute ends of it, right, where you go 10, 20 years in prison, right, beyond that, we don't see a really high increase in the, or a change in the no effect. So what we're doing is needlessly killing any people, because if you're killing someone for no added benefit to society, it's needless.
I didn't think about it that way. So you just basically just completely changed my perspective, and thank you and have a good night.
No problem. Thank you so much for coming up. Hey, so if you like what I do, send likes so we can get people that disagree up here. If you like it, send likes. If you disagree, send a guest request down here. And share it with people that disagree or share it with people that agree so they can enjoy the content as well. Yeah, so slay. Let's get Dev up here. It's an agnostic atheist, a person who observes there's no evidence for God and therefore doesn't believe in one.
Hi, how are you?
Doing real well. What'd you send a guest request to talk about?
I mean, if you wouldn't mind, you probably get this topic a lot, but I was just maybe gonna hear your stance on pro-choice.
Yeah, so I don't want the government to force people to give their body to someone that they don't want to, is the general position.
Okay. So like, do you have like a cutoff? I know some people are all 9 months, some people
Yeah,
have
so
like a cutoff.
I believe up until viability, any form of abortion is acceptable. Post-viability, induction of labor ought be always accepted.
So like, what would your definition of viability be?
Well, viability has a definition. It's the point at which a medical professional is able, it like says that they could save this child's life outside the womb. So it's a medical definition.
Okay. So I guess would that technically be all 9 months then, or like just sorry, I think I'm misunderstanding. It's also almost 11 o'clock at night.
They can have
So,
any portion of a point. They can have any type of abortion up until the point that a medical professional says we could take care of this child outside the womb, possibly,
oh, okay.
and then they're
Okay.
required to induce labor.
Okay. So, I mean, I mean, that's not like completely pro-choice then, wouldn't you say?
No, it's 100% pro-choice. You always have a choice as to whether or not you're going to give your body to this child.
Okay. So I mean, what about like preemie cases, I guess?
What about preemie cases?
Whenever they're like my sister, for example, was a preemie, and most would agree that like since she didn't reach the entire like 9 months, then she wasn't considered human. But just because she was born, she was considered human. I don't know. I've heard that argument before, and I
Oh
thought it
yeah,
was
I can, like, as far as my position is concerned, if you're a human the second that it's conception, I don't really
oh,
care
okay.
when you're a human. Yeah, I don't really deny humanity as part of my argument. There's a good question as to when humanity starts, but it's just not
Mhm.
relevant to my argumentation.
Yeah, all good, all good. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm pro-life, but I mean, you seem like pretty reasonable, so I'm not gonna argue with you.
I mean, I'd love to hear your position. I am reasonable. I'd love to hear positions. That's the whole entire point, and discuss them. But yeah, if you don't want to, that's totally respectable.
Sure. I mean, I guess, goal as someone who's pro-life, personally, I would rather make abortion more unnecessary than anything else. So like, I don't think you should have an abortion. I don't agree with it. I think that baby's life has value, just as much as the mother's, you know.
Do you want to make it
So
illegal?
no, I would rather make it like unnecessary.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
then we
guess,
agree. I think abortion's typically wrong. Um,
yeah.
but I just don't think we should make it illegal. That's really the point. Yeah, so fair enough. I think we have pretty much agreement then.
So, but like it's a little unrealistic. But what my family does is like we donate to this health clinic in which it offers free like mental health care to women. And they offer money to people from people who donate to the families that don't think they're financially stable enough to have a baby. You know, just to support them and allow them to at least carry out the pregnancy. So that's more what I mean. Like just people who are more aware of like these institutions that are willing to help women as long as they carry out the pregnancy, so that way abortion is less necessary than anything.
Yeah, so I have a lot of difficulty with those organizations, because it's just judgmental, right? That's my thing. Is I would rather not sit and judge and withhold my charity funds from someone, right?
What do you mean?
Depending on whether they're willing to lease out their body to a child they don't want to for 9 months. So that's my thing, is I think a person who wants to take care of this child and a person that doesn't want to take care of this child are both equally deserving, right? And I think, yeah, I agree. Let's have a society where everyone is economically stable enough to have a child if they want to. I think that should be an option for everyone. But I don't think the solution is to uniquely go after people who are attempting to have abortions, because if we really look at the actions of these organizations, right, not only do they engage in that, right, they also engage in deceptive practices, right, in pregnancy health crisis centers or pregnancy crisis centers, right? A lot of pregnancy crisis centers directly advertise offering abortions, and then they actively dissuade people from offering abortions, or from getting abortions. So I would prefer doing actual policies that we know help, rather than going to private organizations with ulterior motives to help certain people with a asterisk.
Oh, the one or at least my parents donate to don't offer abortions at all.
No, I
They give
know. Yeah.
but they don't advertise it that way either.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just
Um,
talking in general about the crisis
yeah,
pregnancy centers. But do you support things like universal funding for free contraceptive to everyone?
like birth control and such.
Yeah, contraceptive. So condoms, birth control, IUDs, stuff like that.
If it, I don't think they should necessarily be like free, because how would the companies make the money to produce it? I mean, unless
Well,
you're
it's like
saying
roads
involve it
being
in,
free.
huh?
Or it's like education being free. Like it's like radio being free. Like there are things that can be free, and by free I mean government funded so that anyone can get them. Do you think they should be universally accessible to people that need them?
Uh, I mean, I would not say so necessarily, just because like in education, for example, like you have to pay for college because it's a higher up kind of thing, right? It's a higher level of education, just like that's a higher level of protection, right? I mean, you have to pay for like those sorts of things, especially if it's something that you're committing yourself to at such a young age, I guess.
But that's like statistically the best conceivable way we can reduce abortion, right?
You think so?
I mean, we know so. We have implementations of policies like this that show it. So this is what gets me. This is why I have difficulty with this suggestion, is that, oh, we should give our money to private charities. They're going to be the best at it, right? Well, we know these policies work. We know these policies reduce abortions. There's not a whole lot of evidence that these charities actually reduce abortion, right, by and large. And there's a whole lot of evidence that these charities, maybe not your specific ones, but across the board, a lot of pro-life charities, they offer biased and inaccurate information to women in a very vulnerable part of their life, and they specifically target vulnerable women that they can prevent for ulterior motives from getting an abortion. So this is where it gets questionable. Do we just want to judge women? Do we want to control women's lives with our financial private money, which is a form of control, right? Choosing which people get fed from charities, right, is a form of control. And it's not a legal form, but it's a form you're allowed to do, but I still think it's wrong. Or do we want to actually solve the problem at its head, right? Which is solving the institutional problems that cause people to have pregnancies that they don't want to have, which is inequitable access to contraceptives, inequitable access to sex education. Do you believe in K-12 sex education?
Um, I mean, probably like middle school and up. It's not necessary for kindergarteners and such, I don't think.
Okay, so middle school and up, like inclusive, accurate education, non-abstinence only.
Uh, I feel like it should start like at a lower level, like middle school, like it shouldn't be as descriptive as maybe the high school level.
I agree, but we should teach about how to use contraception in public schools.
Mhm.
Yeah,
How
okay,
to safely do things, sure.
and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, that we can agree on. If universal funding for that on a federal level would be a extraordinarily effective form of reduction of abortion.
Mhm.
My question is, why not publicly funding contraception? you're willing to put your own private money towards the least effective thing, right? So like stopping it at the point of abortion is always going to be the least effective because preventing it is always going to be cheaper. So you're willing to put your own private money and advocate everyone else put their private money. Thank you for the gift. Towards the least effective solution. Why do you not want something we already have, which is public funds going towards social well-being, going towards the most effective solution, which is publicly available and publicly funded contraception?
Well, I mean, it's not like my money specifically. It's my parents. Oh,
Sorry, I was
are
just
you
checking
there?
something. I can hear you.
No, you're good. It's my parents, and I just think what they're doing is has helped a lot of people. It may be anecdotal, and it may be like, but I've never seen like the institution be necessarily judgmental. I feel like there are a lot of like stories from people who have gone who have been like, man, these people saved my life and saved my child's life, and I wouldn't have even realized it if I didn't go there. And like, I don't know, I feel like there are some very, very loving people within some of these institutions that a lot of people don't get the option to go to, I guess because of the judgmental ones. I am 18. Well, I'm over 18. I'm 19. I was born 2004 if you want evidence. Anyways, yeah, so I'm just like I feel like there are loving people who are actually wanting to help women, and I don't necessarily consider it judgmental, um, just because we want to offer, I guess, a way out of having to choose abortion. Um, you know? So, I mean, I don't agree with abortion at all. I think I only have like barely any exceptions. So,
Yeah, but you think it should be legal. So you're just advocating people kind of give them. I mean, what are you advocating? Like you're just saying these are good organizations. I just kind of disagree based on like my observation of those organizations. But I guess that would just come down to walking through each one, looking at their expenditures and looking at their propaganda, and that's not a terribly interesting conversation.
no, you're
Um,
good. I'm fully pro-life. That's just like one of the things that a lot of people have not heard of, I guess. It seems you have though. But I've never actually heard of anyone who's heard of them before, so interesting. I have other reasons for being pro-life as well. Um, I think fetus, child, whatever you want to call it, I think their life is just as valuable as those who have life on Earth.
Wait, but like
You know,
I, I'm so once again we've kind of found what we agree on,
yeah.
that abortion tends to be immoral. I'm trying to find what we disagree on a policy level, on a position level. Um, are you advocating anything, or are you just saying you're pro-life? Like,
I mean, I'm more so advocating towards making abortion like completely unnecessary to where it isn't needed.
and how? How? So these
I guess
private
through this,
organizations.
I guess through those organizations is the best way to do it, and people just willing to support families who might have gone through trauma or hello? I can't hear you. Hold on.
You can't hear me. Can y'all hear me now? Gorgeous. Okay. She can send a guest request. Gorgeous. Thank you. Keep sending likes, everyone. Thanks so much.
Hi, how
Hello.
are you doing?
Hello. Doing real well. How old are you?
I'm 18. Everyone always asks that. I don't know if it's because I sound young, but I'm 18.
Because you sound young, yeah. What do you send a guest request to talk about?
Um, I wanted to talk about the choice topic. Like, I agree with abortion when it's like, for example, here in Brazil, I'm Brazilian. Abortion is legal when it's when the pregnancy is a result of rape, or when the birth it's risky for the mother, right? If it could lead to her death, then abortion is legal in those two cases, and I agree with that. But um, I don't agree with abortion when it's not a result of rape, or when it's not like life threatening to the mother, because in my opinion, like um whenever you choose to have a sexual relationship with someone, you're assuming you're taking over the responsibility that it may uh gen you may get pregnant. So when if you do get pregnant, even if you're being careful, like wearing condoms and taking uh meds and everything, it's still like a possibility, because nothing is 100%, right? So, and I also don't think it's about healthcare when it's not like life threatening to the mother, because um because health is about like saving lives and um giving quality of life. And when you say that abortion is healthcare, but it is taking away a life, then it is not about healthcare.
Okay, so I'll address that point by point. Starting backwards, yeah, it increases the standard of living, the lifestyle of the mother, obviously, right? Pregnancy has negative effects. It's the mother's choice whether she wants to deal with those negative effects. Yeah, it increases the livelihood of the mother. So it's healthcare to the mother. We're not really claiming it's healthcare to the fetus. It's healthcare to the mother. So there's that. Next, I disagree that they're taking responsibility to this child. To whom are they taking this responsibility, and how? Can you have a responsibility to a not yet existent thing? No. Are they taking responsibility to each other? No. Are they taking responsibility to the government? No. It doesn't seem cogent that simply creating something necessitates responsibility. It certainly doesn't seem cogent that taking a risk necessitates a responsibility to a non-existent thing. So that I just disagree on. And if that is true, right? If I am responsible for the possible consequences of all of my actions ubiquitously, I'm also responsible for this child, right? And it's possible that this child needs something like my liver, kidney, stem cell transplant or whatever. Am I responsible to give that to the child because I had intercourse and that child came into existence from there? This model of responsibility doesn't actually explain many of our intuitions about responsibility very well. So I'll ask the direct question: what's the limitation of this responsibility? What do I owe this child, right? And can you justify to me why having intercourse creates this responsibility? Because from my view, responsibility is built out of tortious conduct. So like negligence, violations of people's rights that can create a tort, and you can owe someone damages for that. Or number two, contractual obligations. So I agree with you, and then you can call an obligation to me. But sex constitutes neither of those, at least neither of those in relation to the child. So where's the obligation coming from?
Before answering those two questions, I just wanted to make a comment that you said it's healthcare for the mother, right? But abortion you can have like as well as pregnancy. I'm not denying that pregnancy also puts the woman's health at risk, right? But there is many women that abort and then they have depression after that. They can develop psychological issues. They can, if they frequently go through procedures of abortion,
I hear you. I'll respond to this really quick. Every procedure has side effects. every procedure could be worse than not having it. But it's true that the goal of the procedure is to benefit the mother's livelihood. And on average, it does. So say
Well,
something that is actually unique of abortion that would disqualify it from being healthcare, but something having side effects is not unique of abortion.
about the whole responsibility thing, um, I wanted to give like an example. If um, okay, do you think that being pregnant, right? When you're pregnant, you have the responsibility of um taking care of that child that is in your own womb,
To
because
what
it's
extent? What do you
another
mean?
life.
Do I have the responsibility not to punch it? Yes. Do I have the responsibility not to poison it? Yes. What do you mean take care of it?
Well, not to like harm it in any way.
Oh, well, I have a responsibility to everyone not to harm them. Yeah, so I don't. The whole point is like, you're not describing. There's not anything special about this. I don't have the right to poison you, so obviously I don't have the right to poison a fetus. The question is do I have the obligation to give it a thing, to give it my body, to give it my nutrients through the umbilical cord? And that's where it comes down to something special. So I don't think there's any special responsibilities that this mother has to this child, at least prior to viability.
But okay, so your point of view would be that um that the moment where the sperm meets it is not life yet that should be
Not by
taken
any
care
means
of.
is that what I claimed. Actually, I don't really care when it becomes life. We can say that it becomes life at conception. I don't think that phrasing is helpful, right? A sperm is alive, an egg is alive, a fertilized egg is alive. All of them are alive. It's just what lives do you value? But let's say we start valuing at the point of conception. That doesn't, the fact that someone is alive doesn't give a responsibility of another person to them. You're alive. I don't have to give you anything.
But it doesn't give them the right to take away their life, does it?
There we go. But it doesn't give me the responsibility to maintain it either. That's an important distinction, isn't it?
So let's say I had a child. I could just not take the responsibility of maintaining that child alive. I could simply have the baby and put it in a trash bin or whatever, because I don't have the responsibility of maintaining it alive, right?
It's an interesting question. So, what is included in parental responsibility? And this is why I draw the distinction at viability. If you actually understood why I'm making the point that I'm making, right, it would become clear why this is absurd to suggest my position. So, I do believe that obligations can begin at point of viability, right? Importantly, viability is the point at which someone else can help this child. So you have a responsibility when you're in possession of someone that can't help themselves to not prevent other people from helping them if you don't want to. So in the case that someone else can help this child who is otherwise helpless, right? You can't prevent them, and you might be obliged to take active steps to allow them to. But prior to viability, no one else can help this child. So importantly, you can't be obliged to help this child either. There is no obligation. So yeah, to answer quite succinctly, a child outside the womb, other people can help. A child within the womb, no one can help.
So,
Someone else can help them, responsibility to do so as well, as long as you maintain consensual possession of them.
okay, so let's say I'm gonna give a stupid example, but let's say you're in the middle of nowhere, you don't have a phone, you're in the desert, and you can't call anyone. You see this child in the desert. You don't think that person has the uh, obligation of going over to that child and trying to help them simply because you're the only person that can help, right? So there is no one else that can help that child. So you don't think that person is obliged to help her.
So do I think that you have a legal obligation to help random children? No.
So you're saying that if you're in the middle of nowhere, You can't call for help. You don't have the obligation of helping a child that you see out in the desert and it's alone by themselves and can't do anything to protect themselves. You don't have an obligation to go over there and help that child. You should, if it's not,
I
if
understand
you
the
don't want to
question,
take
and I've
care of
answered
that
it.
child, you should just leave it.
I understand the questions, and I've answered it. So, yeah, I believe in freedom. And fundamentally, once we start requiring people, and once we start giving positive obligations, we get rid of freedom. At what point is someone helpless enough that they should be required? Like, the thing is my obligations should come from my consent, right? The only reason I should owe anyone anything is if I've consented or done something that violates their rights. And fundamentally, I haven't done anything to this child, and I haven't contracted out with this child. There's no obligation. So to force me to do something for this child is against my consent.
I think you have an obligation um, to take care of that child that it's in your womb, because it's not that you haven't done anything to them. You gave them life.
So
You're
I did them a
literally the
favor.
reason why they're alive.
Yeah.
Huh?
So this is the thing, is if you want to argue to me that somehow creating life is a negative action that could violate someone's rights such that you have an obligation to them, right? So giving someone a gift doesn't give obligations to it. That's very famously true. But stealing something from someone does, or hurting someone can give an obligation. But it's pretty clear that, creating a child falls within the giving someone a gift. It's a positive thing. It's not a negative thing. Doing a positive thing for someone, right? Or doing something that they consensually ask you to, doesn't give an obligation. And I don't think that creation creates an obligation. If anything, it should reduce obligations, but I don't think that really works because it doesn't exist. So it's not really possible to reduce obligations from zero.
Okay, so you're saying that because giving someone life is a good thing, that takes away your responsibility of maintaining that child's life.
Not that it takes it away. I'm saying that because giving someone life doesn't violate their consent or violate their rights, no obligation is produced from it.
Well, I've seen multiple debates on TikTok about like a woman that wanted to. That's absurd. Of course, I don't agree with it, but this woman
Describe to me
wanted
how
to
it's absurd.
sue. What?
What's absurd?
No, I'm gonna give you an example of this woman on TikTok that wanted to sue her mother because she didn't want to be alive and she did not want to be born, and she wanted to sue her mother over this, right? And she said that it was a violation of her rights that
that's
she
obviously
was
stupid, right? A
conceived.
non-existent thing
Yeah.
cannot have rights, so you're non-existent.
Yes, but it's weird that you're saying that because of something you did, you're going to take away that baby's life.
No. I'm not taking shit from this baby. I'm just not giving it to this baby.
You gave them life already.
Cool.
And that's when you abort, you're taking it away.
And what do they say thank you?
You're killing them. Huh?
I'm not. Cool. I gave them life. You're welcome. I'm not taking something from them. I'm talking quite physically. I'm not taking anything from this child. But the question is why
you're taking their life?
Why does giving someone something necessitate you to give more to that person? That's absurd.
No, but you shouldn't take it away either.
I'm not taking anything away. What? Okay, using the abortion pill, right? Talk to me physically. What am I taking from this fetus?
Their life.
Is that a physical thing? No, it's a conceptual description. So talk to me physically. What am I taking from this fetus?
Well, nothing physically, but it doesn't mean that you're not taking anything away because it's not physical.
No, but the thing is Okay, people can die because of my consequences, right? That's acceptable. I can walk past a person who's dying of starvation and not give them my food. And that doesn't mean I took their life. Even if consequential of me not giving them my food, right? They die. But it's only wrong, it's only my responsibility if they're dying of starvation, they have food, and they're about to eat it, and I steal it from them. Now I'm a murderer. Because I violated their rights, right? I took their property, or I violated their, like, personal being, and they died from it. So there are two rules here. They die, right? And I violated their rights. But abortion is only one. They only die. There's no rights violation, even if there is consequential death.
What does the abortion pill do?
You know what it does? It stops the mother from producing something necessary to the child's life.
So you're taking the person that's dying from starvation, you're taking their food away.
No. Is the progesterone, right, is what it stops producing. That hormone.
So you're taking a hormone that they need to survive away.
I'm not giving them the hormone they need to survive. That's different. It's mine. Something produced by the mother's body is hers. Not the child. Unless you are suggesting that the child owns the mother's body. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, but they're sharing it.
Then anything... Okay, you're saying the fetus in part owns the mother's body.
Because they're sharing it. Like Siamese twins, they in part own each other's body because they're sharing it.
So with Siamese twins, right?
If I have a Siamese twin and I decide to like have a surgery that cuts them out, right? And kill them, but it will not kill me because I give them like I don't know, let's say like a vital amount of blood or something like that, then we were sharing that body and I killed them.
Oh yeah. Oh, also apologies, I did forget. Yeah, conjoined twins is the proper term now.
Yeah, conjoined
Siamese twins is a bit outdated. Right, obviously. So on the question of conjoined twins, the question there is who owns what, right? Is the whole body both twins? Is part of the body part one twins and part of the body the others, right? There's a good question about that. There's not really that question when one thing creates another, right? So the mother created her pancreas, for example, right? And that's where I believe progesterone's coming from. I don't really know. I don't really remember which part of the system it comes from. Let's say it's the pancreas. Okay. She creates her pancreas. And then she starts sharing parts of her body with her fetus. The fact that she starts giving things to this fetus doesn't necessitate her giving more. And it certainly doesn't necessitate, right, a ownership of the mother's things to that child. So, for example, I don't know, a good example might be like an air purifier. If we're sitting in a room and you're like, oh, you know, it's so smoky outside, I want an air purifier. And I'm like, I have one. Let's put it in this room and we can both benefit from it. Just because now you're breathing in the production of my thing doesn't mean that you somehow own the thing that's producing it. Just because you're sharing in the benefits. I'm doing you a favor, right? And you can't turn around and say, oh, because you did me this favor, now I partially own the thing you did the favor. Right? That doesn't make any sense. The mother is sharing part of her body.
She's not doing a
with
favor
the child.
To the child, but because she had intercourse, she took that responsibility that having intercourse could generate life, and she gave that child life. Yeah, she was aware of the risk. She gave that child a life.
Okay. Cool. She gave the child a life. I'm not seeing what gives the responsibility. Does creating someone give you responsibility to this person?
What? Okay, then my question is, why does a parent have a responsibility to maintain their child alive? Why is it a crime to dump a baby in a dumpster or something like that?
Well, you've
Because you
switched
gave
there.
it life, you don't
It's
have the
so
responsibility to keep
interesting.
it.
But you've switched there. You said, why does a parent have to keep their child alive? Which I would say, not by necessity of them being a parent do they have to. But then you got it right. Why is it illegal to put a child in a trash can? Well, because you're stopping other people from helping it, right? So it's illegal for anyone. Well said comment. Illegal for anyone to deprive other people the ability to maintain a child, right? And it's in that you're depriving other people the ability to take care of children, right? If you assume responsibility and then fail that responsibility. So it's about the assumption of responsibility and then the failure of that responsibility. But simple creation doesn't constitute an assumption of responsibility. And certainly, you can't assume responsibility of something that no one else could have taken responsibility for. Because then assumption of responsibility means nothing, because it's not depriving other people of the ability to assume responsibility. So that's the reason, is the second you assume responsibility of a child, that taken responsibility for, depriving the ability to take responsibility for that child, and therefore you must cover that deprivation. But that's not true of a child of the will.
Well, you could wait a couple months and then you could, if you waited a couple months, you could give that child to someone else instead of killing it. So you're depriving them from the help of others.
So this isn't really how that works, right? We're talking about the point of time, right? At this time, can anyone else help them? No? Okay, then at this time, I don't have to help them. Just because hypothetically someone else possibly could help them in the future doesn't mean that you have the responsibility to take them to that future, right? That doesn't really work. The issue with the futuristic point is, first of all, most fetuses don't live. Most pregnancies fail, right? So actually, if we're talking on average, you're wrong. Most of the time, they wouldn't live. But second of all, the responsibility the responsibility is built off of already depriving other people an opportunity, not possibly in the future depriving people an opportunity. Because obviously, if the opportunity for them to help is in the future, I haven't deprived it yet. It's in the future. So I have no obligation currently. See how that works?
If there isn't anyone else that can help the child, does it matter if it's in the mother's womb or if it has already been born? Whether or not you should take responsibility for that child?
So I think the good thing to do is to take responsibility for a child, but let's talk about the situations where no one else can help this child, right? And I'm talking in greater society, because laws don't apply outside of society, obviously, right? Society builds laws. So let's talk within society. Within society, there's a consistent offer by a lot of other people to take your child. That's the adoptive system. That's the foster system of the government, right? So talking about that, when government child, they are especially in need of things like organs, for example. Organs is a great example, and it actually matches pregnancy very well, where the mother is the only person who can be a donor, for example, right? No one else can help this child. Only the mother can give her organ and save this child. It actually matches on really well to our intuitions, where we'd say, okay, well, we shouldn't force them to give an organ donation to that child. I don't think that's right, you know? I don't think that's right to force people to give organs that they don't want to. So the reason that she doesn't owe it just by merit of being a parent is because no one else can give it. But if someone else could give an organ, then she doesn't have the right to say, no, I don't accept your organ. Or at least that's my position. I don't think you can stop someone else from helping in a way that you can't. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I feel like when you um I feel like we're not gonna get anywhere because in my point of view, when you give life to that child, you have the responsibility of keeping them alive. Because you did this, you know. For example, if the mother was the only one that could donate an organ, and she was the cause for that child getting sick and needing an organ, then the mother should absolutely give away that organ to the child.
What if the cause is having been created? What if it's a developmental disorder, just like being a fetus is? So what if it's the natural development of this child, just like a fetus? Is she responsible for that development because she created it such that it would have that development?
Did she know that the child was going to be born like this? Because
Well,
when
let's set
you,
the
like I
requirement
said, when you
that
have
you said.
intercourse,
Did she know that there was a risk of the child needing her organ in the future? And I say pretty much everyone knows that there's a risk that this could happen. So you said that she's responsible for the risks that she takes when she has intercourse. So absolutely, according to you, there should be a responsibility, regardless of if she was a cause outside of creation.
well, if the mother knew that the child was going to be born needing an organ that only her could donate, and she brings this child into the world, then she should absolutely be the one to donate the organ.
But the bar isn't even that she knows that it will happen. The bar is that she knows that there's a risk that it will happen, right?
Yes, but as soon as you find out you're pregnant, you already know that it happened.
Great. Same thing outside the womb. So effectively, you're just saying all parents should be forced to give their child organs for developmental disorders.
No,
But doesn't
that's
all
not what
parents
I'm
accept the
saying.
risk that, given that they know that developmental disorders exist, given that they know that it is possible that they're the only match, which is pretty common knowledge, they're taking this risk when they create a child.
Mm-hmm.
So why are they not responsible for that risk? Seems like you're cherry picking what risks you're responsible for, which I agree, you're not responsible for all risks you take. But your worldview doesn't actually allow for that.
However, it's a different situation when you're pregnant because when you go and abort the child, right? You're taking away the chance that have born and survive.
And when you
You're
don't give
taking away
when you
something
don't
from
give
them.
your liver, you're taking away their chance to continue living. I don't see how being born is any more important than turning two.
Because those are two different things.
But like, why is going from 9 months to 10 months to 11 months more important than going from 24 months to 25 months to 26 months?
It's not that it's more important.
I agree.
It's because you can keep that child alive and
By
you're
necessitating that you
choosing
can't.
not to. For example, when you give an organ, that could lower your lifespan, make you less healthy and everything,
You know what else can do
make you
that?
sick. The surgery could kill you, could have many complications, and
You know
etc.
what else could do that?
It's a different thing.
You know what else can do that? Pregnancy and birth.
It doesn't take away on one of your organs and reduces
Well, it
your
quite
life
literally
quality.
does take away one of your organs. It takes away the placenta. But second of all, it can reduce lifespan. That's what a mortality rate is. Also,
Well,
pregnancy does come with permanent complications a huge portion of the time.
I already said that I'm okay with abortion when it is a risk for the mother's health.
But it's
It's
always
a
a risk for the mother's
pregnancy.
health.
It
So
is
then are you always okay with abortion?
there's a difference between high risk certainty that you have that you're going to give birth and die, or that you're going to give birth and your health is going to be awful, because you can figure that out. Now, when you
This
know
is a
that
skewed view.
there's
Birth is the most dangerous everyday procedure that most people will go through. Most women, at least. I'll repeat that. It is the most common, most dangerous procedure that most people go through.
but when you
Okay.
know that you're
So
healthy
it
enough
is
to give birth,
and also it is less dangerous consistently than organ transplants. Consistently. No, sorry, backwards. Giving a liver is safer than pregnancy and birth on average. Especially giving stem cell transplants, bone marrow transplants, is safer on average than pregnancy and birth. So this line doesn't actually work, right? This line doesn't actually work because you're ignoring the risk that pretty much every woman takes when they get pregnant, but you're hyping up the risk that giving a simple bone marrow transplant is, which seems to suggest that you don't really know the actual medical facts behind this, which begs the question why you're regulating them.
okay, so if you give a liver, you know that's going to lower your life quality for sure, right? Because there's a bunch
really.
of things that you can't do yes, there's a bunch of things that you can't do when you have less when you don't have an organ. There's a bunch of things that you can't do.
You know where it would also you ever affected life?
Mm.
During pregnancy. Actually, very famously, there's a huge amount of rules for things you can't do during pregnancy.
My point is that when you're going to give an organ, you know that your life quality is going to be worst. Now, you don't
And
know
on average, that's also true of
if
pregnancy.
not always.
Yeah, but not always
There's
for
a
a liver as well.
difference.
There are people's livers that grow back to a huge portion of what they gave prior to transplants, right? So liver transplants are living. So to all the people saying this in the comments, right? Living liver transplants, you take a portion of the liver and donate it, and then livers regenerate at high rates. You pretty much never get your whole liver back, but it does regenerate at a high rate. So my question is, we know that pregnancy has long-term effects for a huge portion of women. We know that liver transplants have long-term effects for a huge portion of people, but not always either. For either. You're talking in absolutes where absolutes are not true. This doesn't actually make any sense. You'll permanently alter your body in both cases.
Yeah, but in one of those cases, you know that's gonna lower your life quality. In the other one, you're not sure. You don't know
Well, actually, you don't
100%
know.
that's
You
going to
know it,
affect you.
but that's equivalently true. Those are equally true. So actually, you don't know that it'll lower your life quality when you give a liver transplant, not any more than you do with pregnancy. You're just wrong.
Okay, let's not say like a liver transplant. There's other organs that you can't transplant, right?
Yeah, like bone marrow transplants honestly have basically no effect long term if done properly.
I want to remember the name of one of the organs that you can donate, but it's in Portuguese and I don't remember the name in English. But it's the one for. Wait, I'm gonna remember.
Talking your kidney?
I'm not sure. I don't even know
The one
how
that
it's
filters
called
your
in
blood?
English. I think so.
Probably the kidney.
Yeah, but given, let's say, like a kidney transplant or anything, um, it would definitely lower your life quality, right? Pregnancy doesn't always do that, but the thing is, you do not have the right to take someone else's life away because you're the reason why they are alive.
Well, that's equally true outside the womb. So this is a non-point.
Well, that's why parents are obliged to take care of their children and not let them die. That's why it is a crime to
Then you're not describing to me what the limit of that crime is,
it,
right? Why does that limit stop at your liver or your kidney or your bone marrow transplant?
because it lowers your life quality.
The bone marrow transplant doesn't always. And also, bone marrow transplant's a great example. Bone marrow transplants actually have better outcomes than pregnancies. So you go through a pregnancy which has a worse on average outcome than bone marrow transplants. So this doesn't actually work. This is not reality, right? It's not actually about saying, oh, it's too much to ask, because you're already asking pregnancy, which once again is more dangerous than a bone marrow transplant. So by your
Because
logic,
it's not
should we
the
force them to give a bone marrow transplant?
no, because
Okay,
it's
so
not
it's
the
not about
parents'
quality of
fault
life,
that the
it's not about
child is
effect.
sick. It's not the parents' fault that the child is sick.
Then why is it the parents'
It's the
fault that the
parents'
child
fault
needs a
that
uterus?
they are alive. Huh?
So, okay, we're talking development. You're saying, let's talk about developmental disorder where they need a bone marrow transplant. It's a developmental disorder. They need a bone marrow transfusion, a stem cell transfusion. You get that from the bone marrow. Why are they not responsible for that state of development, but they are responsible for the state of development most people are in inside the uterus?
Because when you have intercourse with someone, you know that one of the results of doing that could be that you're going to generate a life.
Yep, and
Now,
also you know that one of the results coming from that could be that you generate a child who has a developmental disorder that only you can solve. So equally, there's a risk for that.
can you give me an example of a disorder that only the parents can solve?
So not ubiquitously, but famously, things like muscular dystrophy have stem cell transplants, and stem cell transplants are quite infamous for being very genetically specific. So you should engage in a hypothetical in good faith, right? But if you're not willing to do that, we can talk the very specific disorders that produce the requirement for a stem cell transplant. And very famously, stem cell transplants are very genetic specific, meaning that in many, many cases, the only conceivable eligible donors would be the parents or the siblings or direct cousins. Most of the time, only a certain percentage chance that they're eligible donors anyway. So there's obviously a chance that one of these parents are the only eligible donors.
But that could be other people there that could possibly donate, right? That's a possibility, right?
It's a possibility that there could be other people, but there's also a possibility that there could not be other people. And what I'm saying is that they take the risk that there could not be other people. So if you're responsible for your risks, right, however low, like even if you said using contraception, blah, 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 you're still responsible for the risk of pregnancy. So it doesn't matter how likely it is. It just matters that there is a risk. And I'm telling you there is a risk because it is conceivably possible. And it has happened, right? It happens actually every day. People get matches from their parents. So the point is where the parents are the only match, right? It is a possibility. Why are you not responsible for this? This is special pleading.
Okay, so everyone knows that when you have intercourse, you can generate a life, but not everyone may know that your child could be born with this specific genetic disease, and you could be the only donor that would be able to save that child. Not everyone knows that.
So
So
in the
you're
case
not
that they do know
assuming that
that, in the case that they
responsibility.
do know that, do you think we should force them to?
No,
Okay, then the point you just
but
made is moot.
but in a certain way, they're going to be responsible for that child's death.
But is that
Because they
responsible?
were the only one that could help, and they chose not to.
Yeah, so should we hold them legally responsible for the death?
Not legally responsible, but they will get arrested.
Should we hold the parents legally responsible for the death with an abortion?
When you say legally responsible, do you say like jail time?
I'm just saying legally liable. So like any conceivable conviction or legal relevance.
Yes, for abortion, yes.
Okay, wonderful. So if you're responsible for that's responsibility, that's liability for the death. So you're saying, yeah, we should be liable for the death of the child in an abortion, but we shouldn't be liable for the death of the child outside the womb. What is different in the situation I gave you? They knew there was a risk, but we're not holding them responsible for that risk. Seems obviously inconsistent.
Because they're not giving that child a pill that's going to kill them. When you take an abortion pill, you're given that child a pill that's killing them. You're
I'm not giving that child anything, actually.
Killing them.
You don't give the child the pill. The pill doesn't touch the child.
There is ways of abortion where they suck the embryo out. They're directly killing the embryo.
Standard practice is only to do that when it's medically necessary.
Well, however, they're directly killing it. Here in Brazil,
but you agree with
illegal.
That. You agree that that's acceptable in the case where it's medically necessary. So, once again, a non-point.
No, wait, you're going to have to repeat that because I didn't catch it.
You agree that that's acceptable in the case of it being medically necessary, right?
Yes.
So then it's a non-point because standard practice is to only do it when it's medically necessary.
It's medically necessary because it's saving the mother's life. The whole point here, it's not killing anyone or putting anyone's life at risk.
What's not putting the life at risk? Wait, what's not putting a life at risk?
So what I'm saying is when it's putting the mother's life at risk, then it should be done because the fetus is eventually going to kill the mother, right?
Yeah, but obviously killing the fetus is still killing the fetus. This is nonsense. But my point is let's get back to the actual question that I asked, which was, if you're responsible for your actions, you should be responsible for those actions in and outside of the womb. But it seems obvious that you're unwilling to force people to give their body outside the womb, even if that's a consequence of their actions. Okay? So it seems pretty clear you are simply devaluing the autonomy of pregnant women, which is precisely what pro-choicers suggest you're doing, right? Is saying, everyone else has this right. I'm deeply and drastically unwilling to argue that anyone else has any form of autonomy violation at any risk level. But somehow we actually have this huge, invasive 9-month medical condition, and an invasive and painful procedure, one of the most painful procedures most people go through. You're willing to force people through that, but not even through a bone marrow transplant. That's very strange. So it's drastic devaluing of pregnant women for no apparent reason.
But what about the child's body? If it's let's say it's a little girl and the baby it's a girl and you're taking her life away, you're also taking the life of a woman away, and you're violating the rights of the body of that woman that it's inside another woman.
Importantly, you're not violating its rights.
Why should the body of the mother be more important than of the child?
Oh, I'm not saying it is. Me saying you... Okay. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you, Kana. That's so nice. Really appreciate it. So if you come to me and say, hey, Will, you're a match for my liver. Can you give me a portion of your liver to save my life? And I say, no, I don't want to. You could say, well, Will, why are you telling me that your liver is more important than my life? I don't think that'd be accurate. I'm not saying it's more important. I'm just saying I'm going to execute my autonomy because it's my choice. Same thing here. We're not telling anyone what's more valuable. We're telling you that you have the right to say no when someone wants your body, regardless of the consequences of that.
But what about the baby that can't say anything or advocate for themselves? Because the mother can. She can do that. She can't advocate for herself. She can advocate for her body. The baby can't, because it's unprotected.
Okay, so do people that can't advocate for themselves deserve extra rights? Or should we just implement the law ubiquitously?
No, they deserve the same right. So the woman
Gorgeous.
has the
Then
right
this is
to live,
irrelevant.
and the baby has the right to live too. Everyone has the right to life.
Okay.
So does the baby.
Yeah, okay, so what does the right to life include?
The right to be kept alive and not killed.
Oh, okay, so then you could execute your right to life on me and say, you, because of your right to life, I must give you a liver. Because you have the right to be kept alive by me.
There is a difference from when you're outside the body and from when you're inside someone's body and you're sharing that body and you decide that, oh, I gave this child life and I don't want to keep it alive anymore, so I'm just gonna kill it and that's it.
I just don't think you're describing me a helpful way that rights work.
How would you like me to describe it?
In a correct way. Like, I'm not saying you're failing in describing. I'm saying that what you're describing is incorrect. So no, rights, human rights are universal. If I have a right to have my life maintained, right, then I can execute that universal right against anyone. If you're describing a relational right between a mother and their child, right, then you will have to describe to me where this right comes from and why that right produces this obligation. And I'm just simply not buying that you have a consistent view on what that right is in the first place, because you can't apply it universally.
It's as soon as the baby is inside your body and you're sharing it, and you're the reason why it is alive, and it needs, and you choose to terminate the baby, and then it's a different thing from when you're outside the body and for example, if you ask me for like, oh, can you give me like your liver or something, and I say no, I'm not the reason why you're alive. You're not inside my body. You don't need me to survive.
But if you're, well, those are different statements. First of all, I do need you to survive if you're the only match for my liver. But second of all, if you're my mother, you are, and that's the example I'm making.
Okay, let's say this then. The baby is in the mother's womb. It is receiving all the nutrients it needs to stay alive. It is alive to this point, right? Now, let's say you you ask me for my liver. I'm your mom, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give you my liver, right? And then well, let's say a blood transfusion, because it's a better example. Let's say a blood transfusion, right?
Let's talk about blood transfusion, yeah.
And then I'm giving you a blood transfusion, and then I suddenly like just go over there and I unplug the whatever, the cables they're transferring my blood to you, and you die. I would be legally held accountable for killing you because I just went over there and took away the blood I was giving you. That's the same thing with the mother.
Wonderful. Let's talk about that example. So we have this wonderful thing that's directly analogous called dialysis, right? Which is a direct one-to-one blood transfusion. I plug it into my arm, you plug it into your arm.
English.
What?
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know all the names in English, so that's why it's so
It's all good.
confusing.
It's all good. But dialysis basically is if someone has a failing kidney or liver, right? You can put blood into the hairs directly. So if I start that, right, I don't suddenly lose the right to stop it. Okay? I think there's an argument that if I put my blood into a bag and hand you that bag, now it's yours. I think that's what your example proves, right? If I put my blood in a bag and hand you the bag and say I could take it, now I can't take back that gift. But if it's coming from my arm and going into yours, you can't say, you can never unplug.
Well,
No,
let's
of course
say
not. I can unplug a needle from my arm if I want to, and that's precisely what a mother's doing. She's not taking back a gift, right?
so. You
What
think you
she's
wouldn't
doing
be
is not giving it in the first place.
so you think you wouldn't be legally held accountable for unplugging your arm in the middle of a transfusion and killing the person that you were just giving the blood to.
As long as I didn't do it in an unduly reckless way, yeah, I have the right to revoke my consent, of course. You always have the right to revoke your consent, ubiquitously. Unless you sign a contract. But the fact that I've given you something in the past, right, doesn't legally require me to give you it in the future. That's
So
pretty
you
obvious.
agree that you would be legally held accountable if you just all of a sudden unplugged your arm in the middle of a transfusion and kill the other person, because that's what you're doing when you take the pill in order to abort the child. You're stopping them from receiving the hormones and nutrients and everything that you
Your
were
hormones
already
and your
giving them.
nutrients, yeah. So the interesting thing is, I don't know what you're referencing, which is if I did that and then recklessly in the middle of it started pulling tubes out, right, then I could be held responsible because I prevented other people from giving the blood. Right? That's why. But in the case of pregnancy, you're not preventing anyone else from giving the blood, obviously, because you're the only viable match. And then that logic doesn't work, and there's no rationale for it. So that's why I say, if I don't do it unduly recklessly. So unduly recklessly is just in relation to harm that I've caused. Harm that I've caused is in relation to what other harm could have been prevented by someone else doing something different.
Well, but when you unplug your arm and you stop in the middle of a transfusion, you kill that person. It is reckless. You know what I'm saying? It is reckless.
Not what I'm describing. You could say via your feelings, you feel like it's reckless, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the reason that you'd be held legally responsible, maybe, typically you're not held legally responsible. Let's be pretty clear. Typically, right, if I, if I preliminarily consent to go into a procedure to transfer you part of my liver, and then halfway through the procedure, right before they cut it to me, I say, no, I don't actually want to do this. Typically, that's perfectly legally protected, right? That's fine. That's fine. That's what the case law says pretty consistently. All you're not allowed to do is harm the person directly. So if I pulled the tube out of my arm and then air started going through the tube instead, and you died from that, right? Yeah, that would be like putting air in blood anyway.
But
So-
when you stop estrogen and all the hormones and everything that a baby needs, then you're killing it as the same as you would if you just recklessly took the tube out of your arm, and
Yeah,
it
so what's important is not the consequence
may have killed the
by
person.
which the consequence is done. Right? So you have every right to do something that might end in the death of someone. Do you understand that? I have the right to not give you something. I have the right to disconnect. But I don't have the right to do it in a way that is violating your rights, even if the consequence is the same. So as I said, in order to have liability for something, you must both have damage and rights violation. Damage and rights violation. All you're saying, you're harping on the damage, but there's no actual rights violation if I'm not affecting your body directly. And there's no affecting a body by the abortion pill, right? And
How
therefore,
is it not a rights violation to kill someone?
so it's not a rights violation for me to say, I don't want to save you by giving you my liver, and then you die from that. So it's about the phrasing. Do we understand that? It's not a rights violation to have previously given someone blood and not do it again, they die without a blood transfusion. Those things aren't rights violations. They aren't right. Something isn't just a rights violation because someone dies from it.
Yes, I get what you're saying, but when the baby is inside of you,
I don't think location
uh,
changes rights.
I think it does.
Oh, okay. So do you
Because
think fetus has extra rights because of its location?
no, I think it has the same rights outside
Location
and
doesn't change
inside.
rights.
What I mean is that the baby doesn't have extra rights because it is inside the mother, right?
And
But the
location
mother
doesn't.
has, huh?
But the mother has what? Sorry.
But the mother has the responsibility to keep it alive once she
Oh.
gave the baby life.
So responsibilities and rights are directly related. Where there's an obligation, there's a right. Where there's a right, there's an obligation. So that's not a different statement. You are literally just saying that the fetus has the right to the mother's care. So you're saying because she's in, not because of, and you're saying literally because of the location. It is the fact that it is within her womb that gives her this right. So you're saying,
Why are
yes,
parents
location does change rights.
why are parents legally obliged to maintain their child alive? Like
Asked
they
and answered.
cannot, huh?
Asked and answered. I've answered it 3 times. Do you remember my first 3 answers?
Was it the argument about the? No, you wouldn't have to repeat that.
I'd prefer not to. I don't think we're really getting anywhere, so I think I'm going to move on to the next guest. But I
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
you coming up, and
okay.
you can have final comments if you'd like.
Huh? No, that's
You can have
okay.
final comments if you'd like.
No, my boyfriend already called me 5 times, and we're not getting anywhere. So
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you coming up. Thank you.
thank you.
Hello.
What's Yo,
What's up?
how's it going, buddy?
Going real well. How about
How's it
you?
going? Good. I'm not in the car anymore.
Go you.
All right, so let's get some good old-fashioned right versus left debate going on, bro. Hey,
Cool.
Will, can I say something? And I'm not trying to sound weird. Like, I'm not gay, but that eyeliner is just very, very gorgeous on you, bro.
Thank you. I
I'm not
appreciate it.
gay, no homo, but you might turn me. So I'm just saying.
I have
Anyways,
no goal to do that, but I appreciate it. What's the debate that you want to come up?
how about you pick it and we'll go from there.
I'm pretty much fine with anything. Like in terms of ranking this, like if we can talk trans men last, that would be great. Agnostic atheist, I love talking about. Pro-choice, obviously love talking about. Done it quite a lot this live, so we can maybe skip that one for now, but I'm
All right,
fine
let's
with
talk
that.
about feminists and how over the decades feminists have changed their ideology.
Oh, thank God they've changed their ideology, yeah.
What? I think the best feminists are those so-called TERFs that you guys hate.
So, okay, yeah, let's talk historically. Do you support the original feminists?
Yeah, I think that I don't have anything against women wanting equality in society as a whole.
But
I think
the original
it's
feminist movement in America was sparked and aggravated by black people getting the vote before women did. it was an inherently racist and anti-black movement.
Okay. When I think of feminists, I'm thinking of like 50s, 60s early.
They were
So that,
racist.
yeah, I don't know too much about like 100 years ago type of
No,
feminist
like
movement.
50s, 70 years.
Well, black people could vote long before, or wait, when did black people become eligible?
I don't
Or
remember
black
the
men?
precise years, but yeah, like the 50s and 60s, those feminist movements, at the very least,
Well,
were derivative of feminist movements that were incredibly
I
exclusionary of
know,
black
but
people,
like,
and they consistently are exclusionary of black people.
I mean, white women could vote before African Americans, correct?
No,
Okay, then when did women earn the right to vote? Wasn't it the
looking at the
19th Amendment?
exact years up.
Because I'm pretty sure um, white women were able to vote in the 1920s. So,
Yeah, 1920. When
okay,
did
then when did black people be able to vote?
uh directly after the Civil War, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, black men, I guess.
Yeah, so
So,
1869.
okay. So my question is like, what were you trying to say that feminists back in the day were angry because black people were able to vote before the women?
Yeah,
I
there was a
mean,
huge rallying call of the suffragette movement.
okay. Well, I'll just say this. When I think of feminism, I think of 50s and 60s, mainly the 60s. It's like the mainstream, burning bras and taking names type of stuff.
But if you ask BIPOC people, like they are still they still will report like very clearly historically feminism has excluded black people and maintained racist origins, right? Even feminist icons like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? She was famously extremely hostile towards the indigenous community of America in her rulings. And the only reason that we're getting any indigenous movement in the Supreme Court, right? They recently won, I think, 3 court cases in the Supreme Court, is because we got RBG off the
I
bench.
thought she was a straight up progressive or at least slightly liberal.
She's liberal to women, to white women specifically, and somewhat on race, but to indigenous communities and often to black civil rights, she's actually quite horrendous by comparison to what she should be as a
Seems like
liberal.
the regular feminists forgot that part of her, right? Because they love to rally around her.
Yes, because historical feminism and consistently, and the heritage of feminism is a racist one. So this is why I'm saying is we've gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten better. But when you come up here and say, "Oh well, I support first and second wave feminism," well, you're just supporting a more racist version of feminism.
Well, how about this? I'll backtrack and I'll simply say I support feminism that does not include trans women because that's not real feminism.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a turf. That's definitionally a turf.
Call me a
Um,
turf, bro.
yeah, that's just what the word means. So you just actively don't include trans people.
No. When it comes to women's issues, I actually don't
Is feminism only a
include.
women's issue?
Well, it usually has been historically in the last 50 years.
But
It's
do you
been
think
about
feminism should
women's
only address
rights.
women's issues?
No, I think somehow. Well, you know what? Give me an example how to address men's issues at the same time.
Well, I think there are plenty of men's issues that we should address as
Well,
feminists.
well, we all know that feminist is about equality between the sexes, and you
And the
can't
genders.
include trans women in women's issues because
But
of
we the
biologically.
but the thing
Right.
is the whole point of feminism is to not consider sex or gender in social or legal conceptions. So the question is do trans people, if they're classed as men, if they're classed as women, they still are affected by these biases that feminists are working against, right?
I mean, when you talk it like that, then yes, I
Okay.
would consider that correct. I just, when I think of like modern day feminism, I'm thinking of like protection of women from aggressively violent men
That's a
and
part of
stuff
it.
like that. Yeah, and being able to like have their own
You don't think that
sports.
trans people should be protected from aggressively violent men?
I didn't say that, but I'm just
Okay, but
saying
that's the
like in
conclusion of you excluding them from solving that issue.
okay, then what would be the resolution if you have a lot of women in general that you consider TERFs? Like, where, how does that like relate? Because a lot of women probably are
It's not who I
TERFs and a
consider
lot of women
TERFs.
aren't.
Like TERFs are just a term that describes a belief. If they're offended
Okay.
by that term, then stop holding that belief.
So
Um,
how do you get together all these women, however you want to classify women, and include trans women in the argument or the decision making?
but we should
How
include
do you do that?
everyone in feminism. So I'm an intersectional feminist. I believe that
Yeah.
feminism should
What's the
address.
difference from that and a radical feminist?
Oh, I so that's like saying what's the difference between a tall and a ginger? They just describe different things. I am also a radical, right? I am a radical feminist, but I am a radical intersectional feminist. Intersectionality refers to the relationship and other forms of oppression and marginalization. And intersectional feminism recognizes the universality of marginalization and oppression and works against all of them. Radicalness is just in relationship to the norm. So I am extraordinarily far outside of the norm in terms of how much I want to change society, right?
So,
To
hold
accommodate
on,
these
let's go back to
ideals.
intersectional. Why are all women intersectional feminists? Why do you think that
I
is?
don't think all women are intersectional feminists
No, no, no. Why aren't they? That's what I'm saying. Like,
because some of them are racist
oh, well, okay, I'll give you that. Uh,
and some of them are turfs.
yeah.
So
Well, okay, I don't know how to really go from this then, because I'm gonna be honest. I was coming in here trying to troll, but you are kind of, pretty smart. I mean, you are an Oxford student, correct? Did you finally go over there?
I am, yeah, but yeah, this doesn't make me smart, but I appreciate it. Yeah. So if you're
Yes,
trying to
it
troll, then I'll
does.
move on to the next person. That's absolutely fine.
No, 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 no. I was trying to, but it's hard when you're smart and not stupid. So, you know, let's pick another. Okay, pick another topic for me. The anti-death penalty, which is really weird for somebody that's also pro-choice.
I don't think it's totally weird. I don't want the government to force people to give their body to someone, and I don't want the government to kill people.
Okay, I'll give you that. That's fine. All right, I'm gonna let you go, Will. It's funny because I want to ask this before I go. How come you only bring one person up at a time when you have like a million people viewing?
Oh, because I like one-on-one discussions. Uh,
Okay, all right,
yeah,
that's
they're the
fine.
best, and they get the most productive.
All right. Well, you know what, Will? I never really liked you because you were Abby's friend, and but I am gonna say you are a nice and educational kind of guy. So
We'll appreciate that.
maybe it's the good looks, maybe just
Well,
a
thanks.
little. So,
That helps
all
a bit,
right,
but
Will.
Abby has plenty of that, so I appreciate you coming
Yeah,
up.
Abby
So, yeah,
is definitely hot. Anyways, uh, I'll talk to you later, bro. Thank you.
thank you. We don't love commenting on attractiveness of random people online, but I also certainly don't want to insult people. So, just to be clear, Abby's a dear, dear friend. We love Abby. If you don't follow Earth to Abs, you should. She's delightful.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing real well. What'd you send a guest request to disagree on?
Well, I know you from uh Parker's Lives when you used to join all the time and I would watch you and I'd be like, "Whoa. This dude's smart." And I just saw you doing a live now, so I wanted to join and talk to you about I was here for a little bit listening to your conversation about abortion and things of that nature. So I will save that for later because I'm kind of on the fence about it and I want more to pick your brain. But I know you said you love talking about your religious ideologies, and I would love to pick your brain about that as well because I too love talking about it. So what do you believe?
I observe there's no evidence for God, and therefore I don't believe in one. That's at least what the statement is.
Fair enough. So you're not entirely opposed to the idea of a personal or impersonal creator making all that is. You just don't see enough evidence to provide one.
Yeah, there is not. Like, my claim is there is not sufficient evidence. It's nothing to do with what I've seen. But yeah, I guess that's, necessarily related.
Fair enough. Okay. So if you don't see, and I know you probably get this a million times, but if you don't see or you don't think that there is enough evidence to provide a good argument for the case of a creator, what do you think happened in the beginning and how?
Well, yeah, I just don't find it necessary that there was a beginning.
So you
Right?
think
Eternality of the universe is possible.
eternality of the universe, sure. So if that's the case, if the universe was infinite, right? That I kind of had this thought for a while that same thought, and for a while until like I kind of thought about like I think we can both agree that like the universe is like infinite, like constantly expanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how could we always be, I say we being everything, how could we always be if the things within the universe are so vehemently finite and stars die and things are, sorry, unalive and we unalive and things of that nature? The fact that we could be infinite but we are finite, to me, seems like a contradiction.
So things can eternally change and eternally go through cycles. I don't see how a finite set of matter being eternal is a contradiction. The matter can be finite while being eternal. There could be one atom in the universe that is eternal and all other things non-eternal. There's no contradiction there. Everything could be eternal and some things not be. Like, there's nothing to do, like, there's no relationship necessarily, like, principally between size and between eternality.
There's no difference. Are you? Oh, you're saying you're separating the two there, saying like there is no contradiction there, like something can be finite but also eternal.
Finite in terms of like constituent matter. I guess not finite across the time axis. That's what eternal means. But there's no reason that you need to be infinite across all axes in order to be infinite across one.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And when you say all axes, which ones are you referring to?
Like the 3 dimensions.
Sure.
Like 3-dimensionally infinite, while time infinite, right? So you can be time infinite and not 3-dimensionally infinite.
How could that be?
Well, I just don't see any contradiction with it.
No, I mean like could you give me an example of how something could not be 3-dimensionally infinite but time infinite? Is that?
Yeah, so an atom that exists eternally. So like literally all matter right now ever, there are constraints on it, but
Sure.
we see no evidence of it either ceasing to exist or coming into existence. So as far as we can tell about anything, every atomized thing is both eternal and atomized, so not infinite.
Sure. Huh. That's a view I haven't heard before. Okay. So do you believe that the Big Bang happened?
Yeah, I observe evidence for the Big Bang happening, absolutely.
So, and I could be wrong for this, but I think scientists kind of unanimously agree that that was the start of what we have now.
Yes, but that isn't this. I think pretty much everyone. There exist a few stray people, but the also unanimous agreement, if we're to call it unanimous, is that was the beginning of what we know. But that doesn't discount, meaning it's the end of how far back we can look. But what that means is that we don't know what happened prior to it.
Right.
Right. It's to say that it's the end of what we know isn't to comment on what's prior to it. It's actually precisely to not comment on what's prior to it.
Sure. Okay. I guess that's why I should preface, I am a Christian. And to me, it seems more logical for me to believe that there was a creator of that something. I'm not opposed to the big, like I do think the Big Bang happened. I mean, it's science, like there's evidence for it, right? Like, but I think that it makes more sense to me to believe that there was an intelligent designer behind it, rather than it just always existing, because everything has to have a cause at some point. And I know naturally your brain probably is going to go to, well, then does God have a cause? And to that, I normally say, like, God is beyond the creation that he made, just as a watchmaker is beyond the watch that he created. He's not inside the watch making it tick.
Yeah, so the thing is, a few things. First of all, if all things need a cause, then all things need a cause, and it's a fact of things existing. But if that's the logical argument,
Sorry,
so
you
if
cut
all
off.
things within the universe need a cause, well, I just don't find evidence for that. All things I've ever observed need a cause, right? But
Sure.
that's only a relational cause. So a relational cause between this thing within the universe and this other thing within the universe. So to suggest that that necessitates a existential cause, right, between something outside of the universe, I've actually never seen an existential cause happen. So I have absolutely no evidence, first, that it's possible, but certainly don't have evidence that, second, that it's necessary. All I can see is that relational causes are necessary.
It just happens. I see what you're saying. So when you say you don't see enough evidence to prove a creator, whether personal or impersonal, what kind of, I guess, proof would you need for such a thing to happen?
Yeah, so it's nothing to do with what I need, right? So I'm making a comment on facts of knowledge. In fact, there exists not enough evidence to justify the belief. Enough evidence to justify the belief would be evidence that best explains the phenomena observed. So we can agree upon phenomena we observe, right? That's not an interesting question, right? Right. The question is, we have observed phenomena. What consequences of that observation best explain that phenomena? So, I think that is pretty self-explanatory. So, so I observe that. I observe a flash of light, in front of me. And I assume it was a gun, right? Does that assumption best explain the flash of light, right? That depends contextually on the phenomena that we see. I'm applying the same logic to all of our phenomena. We can get secondary consequences from propositional logic, right, of primary phenomena to secondary consequences. In order for God to be a secondary consequence, he has to be the most likely secondary consequence. And I just don't see any set of phenomena in which God is the most likely secondary consequence of those phenomena.
I see. Okay. That, at least I think that makes sense in my brain. Granted, it is kind of late where I am, but I can't sleep. So here I am. So to kind of dumb down your response for the sake of my brain, you're saying if I can't see it, I can't really believe it without evidence.
Well, no, if there exists no evidence. So phenomena is like, you can do high level abstraction, right? But like, if it can't be derived from any of your senses, if it can't be the only way we get any information at all is from our senses. So
Right.
if you can't derive this information from your senses, then the information has no justification, except for metaphysical justification. But I would even argue the vast majority of metaphysical justification is derivative of physical information.
Right. Okay. See, when you say of the senses, my brain kind of naturally wants to gravitate towards the Bible, and to talk about that, like, because that engages one of your senses, or a couple maybe, touch, sight, someone's reading it to you, hearing, I guess.
Yeah, and what best explains the Bible's existence, right? Does some conspiracy of men best explain the Bible's existence, or does a actual divine being best explain the Bible's existence? It seems pretty clear that a conspiracy of men explains the Bible's existence better.
Well, that's fair enough. But something excuse me, something I heard the other day, kind of broke my brain a little bit. Have you ever heard of Frank Turek?
No.
He's at least from my understanding, he's a more popular Christian apologist, and he said, would you lie to make yourself look good? Like maybe fib a couple of numbers on, if you're in the sales force, a couple percentages or something, like most people would probably, even if it's the most minuscule thing, fib to make themselves look good, but it would be completely, not only in certain situations morally culpable, but also just wrong to lie to make yourself look bad. Not that lying to make yourself would look good is right, but I don't know if you get my point or not, but
I do. I understand this. And then the Bible has people lying to their detriment. Yeah.
Well, no, what I mean is, like, why would people lie? Because, like, the disciples even were like, dude, we don't understand this. Like, why would they lie about that? You know?
Yeah, so a few responses here. Cultists hold their belief even while they are literally committing suicide. Right? So, like, just like in reality, lots of people make decisions, and they make horrible decisions.
Agreed.
To their own detriment on the basis of false beliefs. So that's why like a lot of apologists will point to declarations and testaments made to people that then they were arrested or come after by the Roman government. That's my first answer, which is cool. Someone made a bad decision.
Fair enough. Fair
right.
enough.
But secondarily, right, testaments in hostile environments are more appealing than testaments in, beneficial environments. Obviously, I trust someone who wasn't paid than someone who was paid, right? So that is true that it holds higher evidentiary burden, but the question is, does it hold enough evidentiary burden, right? Is it more likely that a God exists because of this testament? Or is it more likely that the testament was never made and it was reported 100 years later? So that's the thing, is there's no independent verification of it, most of these testaments. Most of them are just claimed third hand. So that's the other thing. There's a reporting issue of evidentiary burden, and then even if we accept that the reporting issue is gone, well, okay, people can make bad decisions. People consistently do, especially for religion.
There's
and we all admit that those decisions are made and they're made poorly, and we all ignore those cultists. So we should reasonably ignore these people as well.
Fair enough. I blame you not for that. I think, and it's funny, I kind of had a similar line of thinking until I started looking at, like, the inner workings of it. I would definitely say that I am a Christian, but I definitely have a lot of questions, and I guess I am going to college for biblical studies, and I would say that that's probably 60% of the reason why. Whether that information is biased or not, that's up for debate. But when I started looking at the inner workings of the Bible, like how it was created, right, and all of the manuscripts we have for it and things of that nature, I'm like, in my mind, it's like there's no way that this can't be true, because they did everything they possibly could before the printing press to copy as many as they could. Like, why would they work that hard and do something that tedious if it weren't true? And on top of that, with a cultist, for example, like, I think genuinely, I probably would, like, if somebody came up to me and said, hey, there's this thing that's kind of culty and low-hanging fruit, but the modern American church is incredibly corrupt and is honestly kind of culty. So I I think we could both agree on that. But the if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, there's this religion that's not Christianity, and it has more proof of existence in the context of like manuscripts and the way that it works. Does it contradict itself? Does it claim inerrance? Does it claim exclusivity? Things of that nature." I think I would definitely take it into heavy consideration.
I mean, like, slay, like, cool. Like, that's fine. The thing is just the usefulness or weight of any of these evidences. The fact that a book was copied a lot by people that weren't there originally doesn't really matter. I don't really care. Because it doesn't really matter if a bunch of people fell for a lie. What we should be considering is the validity of the claim in the first place, right? So if I am a successful salesman and sell a lie to 100 people, that doesn't make it more true.
That doesn't make
Right.
it true, right?
But yeah, so what a reasonable person would turn around and they wouldn't ask those 100 people if they believe them, right? Those 100 people aren't eyewitness testimonies, right? What is an eyewitness testimony is me, right? Who's spreading the lie. And then you should do analysis on what I'm saying, right?
Right.
And
I would want to be sure that what you're saying is legit. Yeah.
exactly. So this is what we do to the Bible, is go back to the sources of it, not look how people develop those sources and if there were people that trusted those sources. Because also a huge amount of those 100 people that would fall for the lie, if we were putting this in the Bible, a lot of them use that lie to control other people, right? That's why the Bible had mass implementation and why a lot of power structures were built around it, is because it was kind of useful for a lot of leaders to have a ubiquitous religion. That's what we saw in the Dark Ages. That's what a lot of.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that, actually. And that's what I'm kind of trying to figure out, is like why, essentially, you know. But I also agree with you that the interpretations that people make out of the Bible were just incredibly bad. Like you could prove that the H-man, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name on TikTok or not, wasn't a bad guy for unaliving all of the Jews. You know, you could prove that with a couple verses. You know, but even so, to me, that doesn't, just because there's a popular quote, it says you can be sincere, but you can be sincerely wrong. And I think even if you're sincerely wrong, that might not disprove that there would be a God.
Yeah. And we're not trying to disprove that there is a God. We're trying to say that this proof is false for a God. Yeah, that's all.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. That's all I got on that subject. I definitely, you're making me want to dig into this more. But
I love apologetics.
Me too. It's so fun to talk about, but I don't like coming at it from like a aggressor standpoint. I feel like from a Christian or people facing the Christian perspective think that a lot of times they're trying to turn them into a conversion project, but that's never my intention. I just like to share thoughts and ideas, and you know, iron sharpens iron, whether you believe in God or not. I mean, that's a pretty good thing. So yeah, I do appreciate that. But do you have the mental energy to talk about pro-choice again?
Yeah, sure. That'd be lovely.
Okay. So I am honestly kind of on the fence about this. So I will put the light on you for a minute and ask you in simple layman's terms if you could describe to me your view.
Yeah, so starting it quite simply, I don't want to force women to give their body to a child that they don't want to give it to. I believe I have a right to my body, and I believe that the government can't tell me who to give my body to. That comes from a certain view of parental obligation that doesn't include their body. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. So
okay.
That's it. Yeah.
So you believe that you have a right to your body, and you have the right to choose who to give it to, in a manner of speaking, no matter the age. It doesn't discriminate, in a manner of speaking.
Someone being younger doesn't give them more of a claim to my body.
Fair. Okay. So my brain naturally in this subject wants to go straight to morality. You know, like, would it be, in your opinion, would it be morally culpable to have an abortion because you didn't feel like raising the child?
Oh, I think a huge portion of abortion is immoral. That's been my position forever, yeah.
Oh, really?
I don't really think abortion is really moral if we give the fetus humanity, right? If I say, oh, this is a full human being, yeah, obviously, like, not helping a human is bad. I don't really know where I stand on the humanity of the fetus, but it doesn't really matter to my position on pro-choice, pro-life, right? Because the question is whether it should be legal, at least within the context of pro-choice, pro-life. So yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I think me and you can both kind of agree that conception begins at birth. I mean, there was a study that showed that like 96% of the scientists that they asked said that conception begins at birth. I don't know if you...
I mean,
Yeah, sorry. Words. So, okay. I think one of the arguments that people have a lot with humanity, the argument between pro-choice, pro-life, I think, is more about, is the child like alive, in a manner of speaking? Does it have that humanity, right? And I think some people say it has to like check off a certain number of boxes to be able to be viable for humanity. Some people say that it literally just has humanity as soon as it gets life, and that is something else that I am not entirely sure of either. But if okay, I didn't realize we agreed as much as we did. So if do you think that abortions are only for medical necessity, and if so, in what context do you describe medical?
Are you talking legally?
Like, if it's medically necessary, and sure, we can go there too.
Oh yeah, so my legal position is that any form of abortion is acceptable for any reason up until viability, legally. Post viability, induction of labor is the acceptable form of abortion.
Induction of labor, what's that?
Inducing labor, so causing labor.
Expulsion
of the child, yeah. From
I see. Yeah. Okay. For any reason, and your mind doesn't go to morals when you say for any reason.
Well, the thing is it doesn't when we're talking about how to express your rights. So, for example, I own my food.
Okay.
If I don't want to give you my food because I don't like you, I have just as much of the right to do that as I do if you are ugly. Like,
even if you did like me.
Yeah. Like, if the whole entire point is I have a right to my food, and you don't have a right to steal it. It doesn't matter why I institute this right, why I execute this right. It just matters that I have the right to execute that right. Does that make sense? So that's why I don't consider why you're executing this right. That's not relevant. The point is that you have the legal right, and by merit of this legal right, you have the right to enforce it.
I see. And you don't think there should be any limitations on that because of the reasons of some people?
So you would have to justify if you have the right to do something. No, there should not be limitations on why you should why and when you have this right, because ultimately people will just say no reason, right? Like, you say, why do you want this abortion? Because I want it. And then you'd be like, well, then you can't have it. And then like, well, do I not have a right to it?
Oh, because then they could just lie about the reason.
Yeah, it's like it's an inane thing. If I just, or you just like, you can't force people to tell you why they want to enact a right.
Yeah, freedom of speech. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just free to you're free to do it if you have a right to do it.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Now, it's funny because now my brain goes to gun control with this kind of thing, because it's like, if you have the right to bear arms, then you just have the right to bear arms for whatever reason.
I just don't believe in the right to bear arms. I just don't support that. Yeah.
Oh, full out. Like, you're like, we shouldn't have.
Oh yeah, it's just not a human right. It's maybe a civil right within America. I just don't think it's a just civil right. So yeah.
Under what context?
there's no like epistemic justification for it, and then like also it has net. So if there's no epistemic justification for a right prima facie, you would have to prove that it's like utilitarianly productive. The civil right to a gun, like just across the board, is net society. Like gun regulations are net positive effects on society.
For society and not like for the military.
Yeah, the military doesn't need to justify their ownership of weapons on the basis of human rights. It needs to justify the ownership on weapons on the basis of their public good.
Okay.
Right? And defense of nation.
I agree with you. Okay. I do agree with that. Okay. So the right to do something should not have to constitute any kind of reason or moral obligation, is what you're saying. At least under this, is there any kind of right that requires any type of limit for what, I mean, in America?
Well, like civil rights do, certainly. Like, because like this is where I make the distinction. If you have like a human right to do something, if we agree that this right exists, if we agree that you prima facie own your body, and a good government doesn't infringe upon that, then the only time in which it's acceptable to infringe upon it is when you are protecting another person's co-equal right. But abortion doesn't fall into that. So no, I don't think you need to justify the uses of your right. Let me phrase it this way. Why I kind of find this is odd is like I have a right to own my own body.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a right to my body.
Right.
If you're dying and I have a liver that could save you, and you say I would like your liver, I don't need a reason to say no, right? That seems pretty self-evident. I can say no, and you can say why, and you can say because I don't want to. That's good enough. Right? That's good enough for that. And even if I had a bad reason for doing it, right, you still have the right to do it. So if like, unfortunately, this is true, but like to take an extreme example here, and I think you would agree with me still, if a black person needed a liver and a white person and a white racist, right, was the person that had the liver, if that white racist said, no, I don't want to give my liver to this person because they are black, the government still should not step in and say, no, we're going to force you to. Right? Like that would still be a bad thing for a government to do.
Because they're infringing upon the right to your own body. Yeah. Despite the excuse or answer. That's like both terrifying and a bit freeing at the same time, because it's like, okay, well, we have this type of freedom, but we also have this type of freedom, you know? So in your mind then, would a perfect government look to you like that, where there is the free ability, excluding civil rights, obviously, because we're talking about human rights, where there is no limit on any kind of human right? How would you, I guess, deal with the people that are doing it for the wrong reasons or abusing it?
I don't think you can. I don't understand the question really. It's not the purview of the legal system. The purview of the legal system is to enforce rights. What we can do is, like with social programs, I guess, we can incentivize what we think is the proper decision, right? We can fund and incentivize people to execute their rights in certain ways. This is very famous in America, right? The federal government basically bribes the state government to execute states' rights in certain ways. So we can bribe people to do it, but we can't use like legal force, right? There's a difference between fining someone or putting someone in jail or like, you know, charging them for something and like saying, hey, I'll pay you this amount of money if you just do this thing. So I think that's like one way you can do it. I think that's how we kind of
Fair enough. Should morals be implemented into the government system?
Well, inherently, human rights are a set of morals. I just think they're the correct set of morals. Yeah, human rights are a moral set. Obviously. It's just I think these are the correct moral sets. That's the question. And I think that those are the moral sets that are relevant to a justice system. So a justice system's question is very different than a person's question. A justice system's question is, when is it just to use force against someone?
Or to, yeah, when is it just to apply justice? Yeah.
Yeah, to use force against someone. That's a different question than what is a just thing to do in in the first place, right? So me as an individual making a choice, right? That I think is for normal this type of ethical question, right? But when a justice system is saying I'm prima facie going to do something wrong, I'm gonna use force. It needs to be justified on the basis of human rights. But yeah, we could go into why I believe that to be true. But it also kind of matches most people's intuitions, right? Like I don't believe in organ harvesting, right? Even though forcing people to give their organs might be what's best for society in fact, right?
Sure.
So if we believe that a good society is one that allows people to die when other people could be giving their organs, right, then we believe a good society is one that values bodily autonomy more than like net total life.
I see. And when you say organ harvesting, do you mean like under the context of like medical necessity? Like if someone consents to be an organ donor and they show it on their ID and all of that, is that what you mean?
I mean, organ harvesting is an unconsensual organ harvesting.
See, that's another weird topic. Is like how could you possibly consent or not consent to something when you are not here?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. You can just like it's like I support a system where it's an opt-out system, but that's a totally different question. Yeah, I think yeah you can consent over to what to do with your body. How we do that is you just transfer ownership of your body to a trust, and then that trust is what has consenting power over it, and then you just sign a contract with the trust to do certain things, and then they're contractually obligated to do those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not realize we agreed fundamentally as much as we did. The only thing that I can honestly really see the human disagreement upon is just the religious background. I honestly kind of agree with your position of abortion, and
Oh, you don't want to make abortion illegal?
Huh?
You don't want to make abortion illegal?
In my opinion, no. Again, I'm on the fence about it, but from what I know right now, no. I don't think so. I think sometimes it is needed. Now, you're right. We do have the human right to our own bodies, but at the same time, if someone is using it for a method of birth control, just constantly going to the doctor. I know that there is an abortion pill, which does have some side effects, but I mean, just going to, a medical clinic and constantly unaliving, children, then it's like, I don't know. I think that's bad. I think it's only when it's medically needed.
Yeah, it can be bad, but like, what do you suggest is done about it? Like, I don't think we should take people's rights away because they're using them poorly. I think maybe we could I think the most you could do is like cut off public funding to people that overuse it. I think that maybe, because public funding is like gracious of the government.
Sure.
But other than that, yeah.
One of the people I was talking to about this suggested castration if you get an abortion too many times, which I'm like, I mean, like you said, slay, like okay,
No, gross. Like that's literally the worst.
Exactly. Like I don't know. I don't know. I think probably because the only thing I can think of, if you're using something for the wrong reasons, even just saying the word wrong insinuates some kind of moral compass in some way or another. So there would have to be some kind of moral obligation. And even then, if there was, they could just lie about it. So that's complicated. And now my brain hurts. But yeah, dude. What'd you say?
I say gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, gorgeous. Also, you look beautiful tonight.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if anyone's told you that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. But I don't know if there's more people wanting to come up here.
Yeah, there are a few guest requests. So unless you have anything else to say, I'm happy to move on.
Yeah, go right ahead. I really enjoyed talking to you. Next time you're live, I will definitely request. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming up. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Have a good night, man.
Well, very kind people coming on today.
Hello?
Hello. Would you send a guest request to disagree on?
Yeah. So I'm not seeing behind your head, but there was one I've been seeing this live for a while. Good. So I disagree on the trans men are men topic,
Oh, lovely. Why?
but I respectfully disagree. So I'll tell you why. Um, I'm a millennial. So when the entire culmination of the LGBTQ plus, like I don't know all the letters now, right? Movement happened and started. It was around the time when I was like a teenager going into my early 20s. So, hello?
Hello.
Oh, yeah. So I really was in support of, people coming out and being who they are and what they want to be and all of the things. So even in my like early 30s, I was really in support of the trans movement, right? And I was really in support of people being allowed to be what they wanted to be and who they are. Um, Not specifically only trans men, but trans people on the whole. I understand their struggles and I really support them as people, and that I think that they're entitled to have rights. But I mean, I don't care if you don't claim me Alucard. But the thing is, wow, why do people in your comments so rude?
All comments are rude.
Yeah, okay. The thing is, a trans person, I think, while they identify as something, they are what they are. And it's fine to be what you are, and it's fine to be recognized for what you want to be. So I am in support of, using people's pronouns and recognizing them for what their gender identity is. But I think that it goes a little too far when we kind of try to dox people or cancel them for mistakes. Sometimes maybe a little pushback,
Who's
and
been
I
doxxed for a
don't.
mistake?
I haven't been doxed from it. You can't dox me where I'm from.
No, but
The
who are you talking about? Like, there a public figure that has been doxxed for a mistake?
Yeah, generally. So I think you see it a lot on TikTok, and you see it a lot where, trans people, they may have been called sir or ma'am or misgendered or misidentified. And I mean, it goes a little bit too far.
I mean, I've misgendered a lot of people on accident, and
Yes.
then I've been corrected politely, and then I've changed my behavior quickly to be respectful. I've literally never been threatened to be doxxed. I've never seen anyone who made a mistake and corrected it be threatened to be doxxed. This seems like I really genuinely have absolutely no clue what you're talking about.
Okay. So can we agree then, right, that not everyone who identifies as a gender looks looks like that gender?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people don't present as their identification.
Great. And can we agree that just like a person has a right to be identified and use their pronouns, there are people who may not agree that they are that gender?
Yeah, so there exist people that are incorrect. That's fine.
I mean, incorrect is one thing. I mean, you're
Yes.
entitled to an opinion, I'm entitled to an opinion.
I
But
don't like that
where we
phrase is
have an
meaningless.
issue,
Entitled in what way? To whom? From whom?
you're entitled to an opinion. Everybody is
What does that
entitled
mean?
to. Wait, I don't know what you mean by what does that mean?
You said a sentence. I don't know. What do you mean people are entitled to have an opinion?
Everybody's entitled to have an opinion. You're
I
entitled,
heard the
and
words. What does that mean?
an opinion is formed
I know
by a
what an
thought.
opinion is. What does it mean to be entitled to an opinion?
You're allowed to have an opinion.
Okay, allowed in what relationship? Who would be disallowing you from having an opinion?
That's what I'm saying. Everybody's
But the
allowed to
thing
have
is
an
like
opinion.
people say that to excuse consequences of their actions. So I agree in freedom of speech. I don't think the government should be shutting down transphobes necessarily, right?
I'm not I'm
But
not saying
I'm
that the
not. What? Who
government
are
should
they?
shut down
The thing
anybody.
is like entitled from whom? Whose consequence? You're not entitled for me to like a transphobe isn't entitled to not be made fun of. A transphobe isn't entitled to not be disagreed with. They're not entitled to a whole lot of things that come with their opinion.
But they're entitled to have an opinion.
Yeah, but no one can physically stop anyone from having an opinion. So then being
Exactly.
entitled, that's like me being entitled to like having a favorite color. It's a meaningless statement. But yeah,
But
okay.
but
I agree.
it's a right that you
I
have.
agree with this yeah, it's a meaningless statement. I agree with the meaningless statement. People are entitled to have thoughts. Okay.
But the issue comes when one person's opinion is weighed against an actual fact. Yes?
What's the issue? And what's like describe to me actually like in reality the actions that are happening.
Okay, good. So you're entitled to feel like you're a woman or a man, even if you were born in a biological body that is either biologically woman or biologically male, right? So a biological female can be born a biological female and they are entitled to feel like they are a man. That makes them a trans man. And they're entitled to want to change their gender. Yes?
So once again, meaningless. I don't think you're entitled to things that no one can stop you from. I think entitlements have to do with relationships between people. But I understand what you're saying. They are able to do this. Yes.
Good. So just like they are able to change their gender or want to identify as a particular gender, there are persons who are also able to not want to recognize that gender.
Cool.
Yes?
People's ability to be incorrect is not relevant.
Well, it's incorrect or correct is an opinion because the fact is that a person who was born a female can't get prostate cancer because they don't have a
Must you
prostate.
be able to get prostate cancer to be a man?
No.
Okay, then that's irrelevant.
However, it's not irrelevant because
It
if you
is
are a man, it is possible that you have prostate cancer
not
or you
ubiquitously.
can have prostate cancer.
Some men
Likewise,
have their
if
prostate
you were
taken out.
born a man, if you were born male, you will never, ever, 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 ever be able to have uterine cancer
Not ubiquitously
or
true. There are males
ovarian
with
cancer.
uteruses.
Sorry?
Not ubiquitously true. This is the difficulty, is when you talk facts. This is why I want you to use the words in reality, what's happening. No, there exist intersex men and intersex
No, no,
males
no. I'm not talking about
that
intersex.
have
I'm talking about
uteruses.
transgender people. Intersex
But I'm talking
is
about intersex people.
no,
You
no,
made an absolute claim that was absolutely false.
no, no, no. We are talking about transgender people, people who were
You're talking
born,
about men
no, no,
and males.
people who were born as a biological woman or biological man, indisputably, not intersex people, biological people,
So
biological
your
male or
claim,
biological female.
what you said was that biological males
Mm-hmm,
can never get
mm-hmm.
uterine cancer.
That is correct.
That is categorically false.
It
There
is not
exist males.
categorically
Okay.
false.
There
Intersex
exist
males are not biological.
one second. There are biological males who have uteruses.
No, they are not.
Okay. Intersex males are biological males.
They can also be biological females. That's why they are intersex. The
So
sex.
intersex people, right,
Mm-hmm.
can be male and can be female, or can
Correct.
fall somewhere in between.
But they are not
But they
transgender
can still,
people.
but that we're not exclusively talking about transgender people.
Yes, we
You
are.
made a claim about all males. Intersex
No,
males are
I
still
made a
male.
claim about people who were born indisputably biologically men or female. Intersex is a nuance, right? It's not the norm.
Does that nuance exist?
It does exist, but it's not a
So what was your
transgender
statement?
person.
Was your statement that most
So
males
are all
can't get uterine
transgender people
cancer?
intersex?
One second. Was your statement that most males can't get uterine cancer?
No,
Or was
I
your
said
statement that all males
biological
can't
men.
get
I
uterine
said
cancer?
biological men.
Are intersex males biological males?
Are they fully biological male? Are all intersex people transgender?
Mm, What?
Are all intersex people transgender?
Are all males
No,
transgender?
no. I'm asking you a question.
No.
Are all intersex people, are all transgender people intersex?
No and no. Irrelevant.
Good. Therefore, a biological male born a man indisputably not intersex.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So non-intersex men can't get uterine cancer. Correct.
That's correct. And non-intersex women can't get prostate cancer.
With the exception of trans men, of course. And vice
They
versa.
are not. They are non-intersex biological women and men.
So there's a very precise phrasing here. Men who were born men and are not intersex
Correct.
cannot get uterine cancer.
Correct.
Still a question, because you could, get a uterine transplant, an implant.
You actually can't, but okay.
You can't get a uterine implant?
No, you can.
What?
If you try, and this is not like a heart or a lung that your body needs. A man's body is not equipped to have a uterus because it's not just a uterus. The entire female reproductive system, inclusive of ovarian, fallopian tubes, and the sex organs,
But
right, can't be
you
transplanted
can
into
get
a
a
man's
uterine
body.
implant. You're wrong.
You
You
may
can't
be
you, you,
able
you
to
can get a
try to
uterine
get the
implant.
uterine
Men
implant.
so people that have born and assigned man at birth can't have gotten uterine implants before. They haven't been functional yet,
Well,
but they have
exactly.
gotten
So if
uterine
it's not
implants before. You are
functional,
incorrect.
right? If it's not functional, then it's not actually an effective and successful surgery. So you
But
can't
is it
get
a
a
uterus?
uterine implant.
Is it a uterus?
Is it a functional uterus?
Did you say uterine cancer on functional uteruses?
Well, what is the point in getting a uterus if it's not functioning?
But I'm talking about the thing you said, right? Are you,
Men can't get a
when
uterus.
you say words, I expect you to mean the meaning of
Their
those
body
words.
will reject it. Therefore, it won't function.
You're
They can't
incorrect.
actually successfully get a uterus.
People have had successful
You're trying
uterine
to
implants. They just
confuse
haven't
the
worked.
situation with nuances, right? But if you stick to biological and simple facts, right, it's very
Wait, but
simple.
biology
There has
isn't
been no
simple.
history. There's been no history ever in the history of the world that a man has been able to implant a uterus into his body and that uterus works. Am I
Yes, I didn't
correct?
claim otherwise. First of all,
Right. So then
but
I'm telling
wait,
you that a
no,
man,
one
even if he
one
gets
second.
a uterine
Okay,
implant,
I'm not going
he
to speak to
won't
you if
have
you
a
don't let me respond
proclivity
to your
to get
questions.
uterine
If you
cancer.
ask a question, I expect you to want an answer. Do you understand?
I'm listening.
What you said was that men could not get. There we go.
Mm.
There we go. We're back. I'm back. As I was saying, what you said is that men cannot get uterine cancer.
Correct.
I've given you 3 separate cases where that is not true. Okay?
No, you haven't.
And you've walked back your statement 3 separate times.
I have not.
Right? So
Can you
I
give me
said
the 3
intersex
separate
people,
instances?
intersex people,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had to walk back your statement and exclude intersex people verbatim. I said trans people, you had to walk back your statement, and you said you meant men who were born men. And then I said men who get uterine transplants. And now you've had to walk back your statement and say, oh, I meant uterine cancer on functional uteruses.
Well, you see,
So those are
what you're
three separate
trying to
cases
do
where the
is
statement that
confuse
you
you and
said
nuance.
is fundamentally false. So I'm
How is it
sorry.
fundamentally
I'm
false?
sorry. I'm sorry if you didn't make your statement clear enough to be correct. But if you want to talk about basic facts, right? The basic facts are what you said is incorrect. Nuance is the truth. Biology is not simple. Making something simpler doesn't make it truer. Making something simpler makes it less true.
Okay.
The truth is complex.
So,
So you
okay.
can't just ignore complexity when you want to make an absolute and false statement.
So let's get this correct. What you're telling me is that men can get uterine cancer.
Some men can, yes.
Which men can?
Intersex men, trans men, and men with uterine implants.
So, biological men who were born men,
Biological men is a nonsensical term.
people who were born men can't get
Yep.
uterine cancer.
Intersex men who are born men and
But
cis men with uterine implants.
so this discussion said trans men are men. Yes?
Yes.
Do trans men include intersex men?
Do trans men include intersex men? Not ubiquitously. There are some intersex men that are trans men, but
So
not
then-
all trans men are intersex, and not all intersex men are men.
Good. So then,
uh,
because they are not one and the same, then the obvious assumption is that when we speak about trans men being men, we're talking about men who were biologically born as a woman and have taken the bottom surgery to become a man, makes them a trans man. Yes?
So I don't think bottom surgery is relevant to transgenderism. But second of all,
It
I'm
doesn't matter what you think.
responding to a claim you made about all men.
Okay, but I'm not asking you for your opinion. We're speaking about fact.
And I'm
So
not
the
talking
fact
I'm not
is-
talking about opinion. I'm talking
But you
about the
just said you don't
fact
think.
that some men can get uterine cancer. So
No, but
the
you don't
statement
think.
I just want to say, because I'm not going to repeat it and we can move on from it. The statement you made was regarding all men.
No,
Okay.
I said
Because you
I
said
said I
men
disagree
with no
with
adjectives.
trans men are men. That's the
Yeah,
discussion
trans
that
men
I
are
started
men.
with.
The
And I said
superset
I
men is
disagree with
regarding
that.
all men.
I disagree that trans men are men.
Okay.
And I
What does a man have to
didn't
be a
limit
man?
it to trans men. I also included in that statement that trans women, while I recognize their right to identify to whom they are, and while I respect their pronouns, the simple scientific fact is that transgender people are not actually the gender that they identify as because they are not biologically that gender.
What science says that?
All science says that. Simple
All
fact.
science says that.
Yes. So if
Okay.
you're a
So
woman,
let's talk about
and
let's
let's
talk
go back
about
to
you.
let's
No,
go
one
back to
second.
very simplified. Simple,
Okay, so
simple,
let's talk
simple.
about all science.
Let's talk about all science.
Currently, the AMA, the APA, the WHO, and the CDC, every major medical association in America and the Western world, recognize the validity of trans people and affirm their gender.
I'm not saying that they're invalid. I'm not saying that they're invalid. What I'm saying is a person who is transgender male or transgender female, transgender man, transgender woman, who was born one gender, one biological sex, and has transitioned to another biological sex,
I know it, so that's
is
not really what we're describing.
is not actually biologically that biological sex. So a woman,
Once again,
a
there's a
person who
reason
was
that
born a
if you're
woman,
interested in this
adult,
debate, it's going to be two ways. So transgender is different than transsex.
I'm
And
not saying transex, I
what we're
said
talking about
transgender.
is let's use the scientific terms that modern science is using. If you're interested in science,
Well, I'm
okay?
telling you that
I don't want you to tell me. I want you to speak with me. So, as I was saying, the modern science recognizes a distinction between gender and sex. That's the APA nomenclature that is being used. Typically, sex is regarding certain set sexual characteristics, whereas gender is regarding a set of sociological orientations. That's the
I
APA's
take your point.
position. So let's talk
I take
about
your
all
point and recognize
science.
what you're saying.
So transgender people are talking about those sociological characteristics, and you can in fact change those sociological orientations. So no, the APA
I'm in
disagrees with
agreement
what
with
you're
this.
saying.
You can change your sociological orientation, but let me just bring the point. If a transgender woman, a person who was born male and has transitioned to a woman, came to you, right, or any one of these medical students and said, I'm having a miscarriage, would they be tested or treated for a miscarriage?
So there exist trans women that can have miscarriages, once again, intersex people. But
But that's not what we're talking
no,
about.
if they weren't in fact having a miscarriage, they wouldn't they would be treated the exact same as a cis woman who isn't actually having a miscarriage. They wouldn't
But
be treated for
would
something
it
they
be
aren't having.
recognized that a trans person, a man who
It doesn't,
transitioned
but
into
the
a
thing
woman,
is
not
it doesn't
intersex?
actually matter that they're trans. It matters that they're in fact not having what they're claiming to be having.
Okay. And would a person who was born a male who has transitioned to a
Are you
woman,
going to ask me the exact same question in parity with males?
I'm gonna ask you if if they would be tested for breast cancer.
Okay, yeah, this is engage with the argument. Stop asking talking points, right?
But you're
We
not
are not.
engaging with
One
the
second. I
argument. What you're
understand what you're
trying to
saying.
do is confuse the issue with
I
another
don't
term.
believe. Maybe if you heard me
Mhm.
rather than asking the same question like 3 times, you would understand why this is stupid. I'm not saying that transgender women are females. Okay? I'll say it again because we like to repeat here. I'm not saying transgender women are females. I'm not saying transgender men are males. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between man and female, and man and male, and female and woman. Okay?
Okay, and I am
So
saying that there's not.
you continuing to ask me about sexual characteristics has nothing to do with the claim that I'm actually making.
Well, you see, if you're making a claim, but you don't want to look at all the factors that impact that particular decision, right? Then you're basically trying to nullify what the actual argument is. And what I'm saying is you're inviting people to debate you and said, request if you disagree. A trans man is a man. And I told you I disagree. A trans man is not an actual man. A trans man is a woman who has transitioned and identifies as a man, but it does not make them an actual man.
Yeah, the question,
Biologically,
and you said
they
that
are
all
unable
science
to be a
supported
man.
this. Can you tell me how those words are defined? This is what the real question is, okay?
A man is
You
an
keep
adult human male.
Yeah, not all science agrees with that definition. Actually, most science disagrees with that definition.
Which science?
The APA, the AMA, the WHO, and the
And what
CDC
do
all
they say?
recognize an alternative definition to that. Also, linguistically, the Oxford Languages Dictionary recognizes an alternative definition to that. So does the Merriam-Webster. So,
So let me ask you something.
one second, linguistic sociology and medicine all disagree with your definition.
Let me ask you something. If all of these people have changed their definition, right? This was a particular agenda. Does that change the fact that a man, a person who was born with testes and a penis, right, is not capable of functioning as a human female?
Well, it means that when you said that all science agrees with you, you were wrong.
Whether people's opinions say one thing, for example, those same associations that you called, right? want to change breastfeeding to chest feeding to make it inclusive. Not so?
So when you said all scientists agree with me, what did you
I say
mean?
all scientists agree. I said
You said,
science.
I said,
It's a
what
scientific fact.
actually, no, you verbatim said all scientists agree with this.
I said it's a scientific fact.
I mean, we can
Yes?
just lie. If you just want to lie, that's fine. I don't
mean,
love liars on here, but if you just want to lie, that's your choice, right? I'm not going to agree with your lie, but you literally did multiple times say that all scientists agree with what you're saying.
is
But
that what I said? Or did I
yes,
say
you
science?
literally said all scientists.
Okay. When you invite people to debate with you, right? And you try to
I
change
expect
the
them not to be
goalpost.
liars.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? You have a good night. You have a good night. I'll block you.
If you can't figure out a tip. Good night. Oh. Anyway, okay. Send a guest request down here if you disagree with me. Follow me up here if you appreciate what I do. I have my Cash App in my bio, which is absolutely lovely. But I also have I have my Patreon where I upload hours and hours of content. So if you like what I do, you can support me on there, and that really, really helps. It's like $5 for a huge amount of videos of this. Also, to the people asking if I'm trans, I'm a cis man. I'm a cis gay man, but I'm a cis man. Not trans. Yeah. Don't know how we got that. The eyeliner really gets people for queerness. Jesus Christ. The reattainment so will lead by Rainbow Army. What? In what world? Yeah, that is strange. Oh well. Since gender is a social construct, then create your own term. What? Guyliner.
Hi.
Hi, we just sent a guest request to disagree with.
So I want to ask you like your opinions on pro-choice because I know in the UK it's very different to like America and stuff, like their views over here.
Yeah, are you pro-life?
Pardon?
Are you pro-life?
So for me, I think in certain situations, like abortion is okay, but when you've got the women that are out here sleeping with different men every weekend and not using contraception and then just taking Plan B or going to the abortion clinic every month, I think it's wrong. Or if you've got a baby
it should be illegal?
I think it should be illegal past a certain stage. Like if you're so many weeks pregnant. I think when your baby's got a heartbeat and they're moving around on their scan, I think it's wrong.
And it should be illegal at that point.
Yes, definitely.
So are you talking what, like 11 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks? That's around when the propagandists say there was a heartbeat. It's not really an independent heartbeat up until like a few months.
At 12 weeks, you can see a full baby on a scan at 12, maybe 11.
You would say 12 or...
Yeah, definitely. 11. Because I think...
So let's talk about that. It's prior to viability, right? So why do you want to force someone to give their body to their children?
Like I said to you, it's certain situations, like for me personally, if you were to be impregnated not consensually, if things happen, but if you're openly not taking contraception, there's going to be a consequence.
But so if people are on contraception, can they get an abortion post 12 weeks?
Well, it's a difficult one because I'm very like it's. Well, I had a baby 5 weeks ago at 29 weeks and 1 day, right? So, and I know somebody that tried to have an abortion at 25. So, and she was on the pill, obviously the contraceptive pill, but she tried to get an abortion, and over here on the NHS, you can get an abortion for free.
Yeah, I know. I live in the UK for most of my time.
Yeah.
I'm aware. I'm
I
on the
think
NHS.
I don't
But
know. It's a difficult one because I feel like some of the times I think the system is used and abused for a lot of people that, you know.
who in their right mind would go through an abortion if they could avoid it?
Well, I know plenty of people that their
Do
baby
you know
daddies have
anyone who
left
has had
them.
more than 3 abortions?
I know someone that's had 2, not 3.
Okay, so this is a lie. That's my.
How's it?
This is where I respond to this. They aren't going to the abortion clinic every month, like you opened up saying, right? What's happening is sometimes some people either don't have access to contraception or education on how to use contraception, or have extenuating circumstances that require them to get an abortion. But as you yourself recognize, you know people, yeah, the most you know someone is doing it twice. Doing it twice cannot conceivably be using and abusing it, right? So I just don't agree with you at all about someone using and abusing it. The vast majority of people that get abortions get 1 abortion. And next to no one gets more than 4, right? Next to no one. So what's the point here? What are you talking about?
I just think that when I've seen some things where people are, like for me personally, having a baby in the neonatal unit, and I've seen children be born at 22 weeks, and then I've seen people that baby daddies have left them at 23 weeks, so they've tried to get an abortion just to hurt him. I think it's wrong.
It can be wrong, but what gives you the right to stop them? Why can you force them to give their body to that baby? That's
Who's
the thing. I
forcing
don't
them?
care if you think it's wrong. I think being a Catholic is wrong.
A
I'm not going to make
Catholic?
Catholicism illegal.
A Catholic?
Yeah, I think being Catholic's wrong.
Why do you think that's wrong?
Horrible institution. Horrible institution that's co-signed to pedophilia and SA for most of its existence. But it's an example. The reason I use that example is because I think it's wrong, but I believe in freedom of religion, right? So yeah, you've the choice to make immoral decisions.
But you
right?
make that statement about Catholics, but does not every religion have something that's gone on? Or
Yeah, that's why I believe most religions are immoral. Yeah, but the reason I make that example, don't get offensive. The reason I make that example is because I believe in freedom. I think being part of most religions is being immoral. And most people, right? If you ask a Catholic if being a Protestant is moral, they're going to say no, right? This is most people. Pretty much everyone thinks that like most religions are immoral. Most people think it for a stupid reason, which is that they believe their own religion, but that's everyone's choice. So of course, like most people, if like we shouldn't live in a society where we believe that it's our right. Oh, she dipped. Oops. I was just trying to support her own freedom, but oh well. Anyway, follow me up here. If you have a guest request, send a guest request here. Yeah. Let's go. Oh no. Oh, thank you. Cut down to something. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing real well. Thank you everyone for the gifts. I appreciate it. What did you send a guest request to disagree on?
More just I just talk about you're not agnostic atheist. I wanted to ask a few questions before I guess prove God. Well, not prove, but establish probability with the existence of God, more than the contrary. So I guess why aren't you convinced that God exists? I guess that's the main.
Because I don't observe ample evidence.
Hmm. Don't you think the methodology for trying to, I guess, hold that sort of belief, or how you came to that, is kind of flawed? Because you're kind of
Well, I don't.
relying on your. Let me
Yeah.
finish real quick. You're kind of relying on your, empirical observation, right? And if God's supposed to be above, anything that you could like possibly conceive in the reality that you expound, doesn't it seem kind of pointless to rely on your empirical observation?
First off, Slay Tommy raid. Thank you, Tommy. Shout out to the people coming in from Tommy's raid. Well, I have nothing other than my empirical observation. I have nothing other than my empirical observation and subjective experience. So if knowledge derived off of the two things that I can conceivably base knowledge off of is flawed, in conclusion, then I either have no knowledge on anything, which I'm fine on. I'm agnostic. But the conclusion of my empirical analysis is that we don't have knowledge on it. So you're either suggesting to me to trust something that I don't have, or to accept that I have no knowledge on something, which is already my conclusion.
Okay, I guess that's fair enough. I'm trying to remember the question I was going to ask you. What would convince you to become, I guess, a believer in God, whether it's deism or theism, just belief in a God?
So the relevant evidentiary burden is phenomena that is best explained by the existence of a God.
Well, I understand that, but I'm saying mainly what would be enough, what would be sufficient in you upholding this belief? Like, what would you consider enough to
Well,
convince
it's
you
not
personally?
personal to me. It's just an objective burden of knowledge. So I experience things, and I think I could make a hypothetical experience where that's true, right? If there were enough, I don't know. So it depends what type of God we're proving. If we were proving something that had powers that I had never seen before, for example, if I was saying there is an entity in this world that can predict the future, right? I would have to see enough prophecies that are so unlikely and specific to come true from the same verified source that later do become true, that the best explanation is that there is a thing in fact that future. So that would be one facet of it. I think you would need multiple atomized examples of that to like describe it. But yeah, ultimately, God is just a product of propositional logic. The existence of a God is a proposition, and you would just need to have evidence that is best explained by the existence of God rather than an ulterior explanation.
Okay. And I guess the last question before I get into proving God, or not proving, but showing evidence. Would you say, I guess the acceptance of the quantity of the evidence is a bit arbitrary?
No, the objective set that I just gave you is derivative off of empirical evidence that we can agree on. So it's like an objective analysis of evidence and knowledge. It's not
Okay,
arbitrary. No.
I don't know if that really answered the question because
So it answered it. No.
okay. I guess I'll just get into proving God or demonstrating God to be probable because I'm an apologetic theist. But I guess you cool with me like using my syllogism and stuff?
Make a functional rhetorical argument, and I'll engage with it.
Of course, of course. So premise one, the mind exists. Do we both agree on that?
Premise one, the mind exists. That's an acceptable premise.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you wouldn't have disagreed on that. Premise two, the properties of the mind are not of which matter can have.
Don't agree to that premise.
Why is that?
Because the mind is a physical thing. So the properties of the mind are, in fact, properties of a physical thing.
Well, I would say that's rather begging the question because what's in question is whether it's physical. Are you saying it's physical?
No, you didn't. You didn't set that in question. You presupposed that it was not physical. So, not being the question, it's not accepting your conclusion.
Well, okay. Well, then I guess I'll ask for your reasoning. Why is the mind physical?
I don't have to provide the reasoning. The burden of evidence is on you to support the presupposition of your argument.
Well, I would say if you make the counterclaim before the evidence is even
Not
shown,
making the
then I think
counterclaim.
that's also an affirmative claim in and of itself because you're affirming the negative.
No, you asked me if I affirm your presupposition. I said no.
Okay, sure.
The
We'll
lack of
start.
affirmation is not a negation. If you can provide evidence for your presupposition, that's fine. But I'm just saying, no, I do not affirm that presupposition.
Okay, sure. So I do want to point out that so far there's no evidence or theory that shows consciousness or mental properties being able to be reduced in matters. Like absolutely no evidence currently. Many philosophers also pose questions about something like that, even being like practical. For example, John Searle posed the question: how does a mental reality of consciousness, intentionality, and mental phenomenon fit into a world consisting entirely of physical properties in fields of force? As well as Colin McGinn's arguing that the problem with
I don't care
materialism.
what other people say. Make your argument.
That's what I'm doing. I'm getting there.
Yeah,
right?
but you quoting other people, I like genuinely when you say this person says this thing, blank. It goes in one, like, I don't care. So make your argument. Make your set of propositions, right? Set out all your propositions, and then we can engage in the validity of those propositions.
Yeah, I believe that the problem with materialism, it tries to construct the mind out of properties that refuse to add up to the mentality. There's no demonstrable evidence that we can assert that the mind can be reduced down to matter and energy, right? But what I
We
will
have no
say,
observations of it being anything else. So that's the general.
actually, I would say it is, because how would you explain the mind interacting with concepts in the non-physical?
As a derivative property of, so we would describe abstract concepts, right, as derivative of empirical observation.
Abstract, doesn't that presuppose Platonism? Like, how are they derivative of abstract?
No, it doesn't presuppose Platonism. It actually directly contradicts Platonism.
How so?
It does, because Platonism supposes that abstract concepts exist outside of the physical.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm saying the exact opposite.
When you asserted that it was a derivative of something, could you repeat that claim? My bad, I forgot.
It was a description of the evidence that you're saying is lacking. It's not a claim in and of itself. So it's directly the opposite of Platonism. I'm saying those abstract concepts that we suppose to exist is in fact a derivative of the physical existence anyway.
Well, that presupposes that the abstract existences have some sort of I guess capabilities for interaction, because you're saying it's like a derivative. It's like something that's entailed from something else being the case, which I don't think you can demonstrate that to be the case.
So I'm saying we're describing a set of things, okay? I'm saying they're in fact, right? They are in fact material things, but there's this delusion that they're anything other than material due to their complexity. That's all.
The abstract the abstract concepts are complex, or the material things that is described by the abstract concepts?
Either. Abstract concepts are merely observations of patterns amongst material things.
Okay, but that doesn't really speak to whether the abstract concepts themselves are actually physical or not.
The abstract concepts, like, there is no distinction between an observation and a physical thing, but make an actual argument as to the existence of God.
I am.
We can get lost.
I'm trying to get
get to the argument. Yeah, we can get lost in Platonism for a very, very long time. The reason that it's really difficult to get to anything relevant is because it has no actual thesis. Right? We're just describing. You can ask questions about like epistemology forever. Make a conclusion, and we can go down premise by premise.
I'm saying that the mind cannot be material because it interacts with the immaterial, and the fact that material and immaterial can't interact with each other is proof in itself. For an interaction to occur, there has to be some shared properties between two things, right? So the mind interacting with concepts which are non-physical will then follow that the mind is non-physical as well.
Make an argument for God.
Okay, are you agreeing that the mind is immaterial? I'm taking a step by step.
I want to see what you draw from this premise. I want to see if it's if my disagreement with your argument relates to the disagreement with this premise.
Okay, I guess I'll just continue, and I guess.
And we can address. I want you to set out an argument. This is what I've been saying the whole time. Is we set out an argument, and then we can discuss in totality the argument.
Well, the whole point is to get the prerequisites done before the argument can
No,
actually be
it's not
constructed
relevant.
to
So,
form.
like, I could have semantic disagreements that are irrelevant to the actual conclusion of your argument, right? If I don't understand what your actual conclusion is. So, in terms of efficiency in debating, right, we should only debate things that I like are conclusively relevant.
Well, the point is, I don't think you can demonstrate that the mind isn't immaterial, so I'm getting that off as a prerequisite because it's the foundation of my conclusion. Whether you agree with it or not, or you agree with the conclusion, I don't think you can demonstrate this or even make an argument this for this thing individually.
I'm
That's
trying
why I'm
to
trying to get it
testify if
out.
I even have to.
If you even have to. Well, it seems like you're a bit hesitant because you might
No,
feel
it's
like you
because
might
it's
be.
an annoying. So I only argue things that I have to argue. I don't like wasting my time, especially with Phil Bros. I don't like wasting my time.
Mhm.
So the point is make a conclusion, right, off of the argumentation, okay, and then I will see what point I want to address with the argument as a whole.
Okay, I will say it's not really how debate structure works, but for you, I will be charitable and I will do what you're saying and I won't make you agree to the said thing. Okay, so I'll just
Don't
continue
be
as
an
if you agreed
asshole.
and then we can talk about what happened.
I said don't be an asshole, right?
Well,
The
Frank,
structure of debate, right, is different depending on what format you're going through. By and large, right, people set out their premises and their conclusions and the relationship between those two first, and then independently justify each of those after. You're just categorically wrong, right? If we go down
no.
Lincoln Douglas formal debate style, that is the structure. If we go down written formal debate style, that is the structure. Academic philosophic writing structure, that is the structure. Very, very, very few Socratic discussions, right? Do you go through the premises before you even understand what the premises are attempting to conclude? You're just wrong.
Well, these things are so basic and fundamental that I don't think you need to know the context in which I'm going to entail these premises. That's why they're so simple.
I
They're
don't need to, but in order, like, you made a claim about what was typical, right? And then you were an asshole about it, so I'm going to engage in that assholery. You are wrong about how most debate structures work.
well, I feel like you're just
Dialogue happens after
sure.
the argument is stated. So please state your argument.
Sure. Okay, like I said, I'll be charitable. So basically my claim is that the properties of matter can be reduced to the mind, right? Since all we experience in the world is just qualia, taste, smell, touch. So essentially, experience is a mental reality, right? So there's no reason to posit a discrete material world beyond what we experience, right? Any physicist will tell you that mostly empty space at which molecules, atoms, electrons, and other strange particles are buzzing about in random, complicated ways inside of your head, but it seems as though when physical objects aren't observed, right, no colors, no sounds, no smells, or tastes either, right, sounds like colors are not physical events. Neither are smells, tastes, or sensations. Things do not smell, taste, or feel like anything when nobody is around to perform those, sensory experiences. The physical world seems totally vacuous, right? No sounds, no tastes, no sensations. So what is left, right? Premise one, the mind exists. Premise two, the properties of the mind is not which matter can have. Conclusion, mind is not reducible to matter. Premise three, substance dualism is unnecessary because all things can be reduced to the mind. Conclusion, all is mind. If all is mind, it follows that a governing mind that brings us all contingent minds, limited matter to experience and operate inside of reality, right? So therefore God exists.
Okay. This is why I wanted you to set out the whole entire argument. The final conclusion is spurious. That's why I wanted you to set out the whole entire argument. The whole entire point is I don't care about arguing about the materiality or immateriality of the mind even if I accept your previous premises, right, that doesn't support the existence of a God. So can you reiterate those final premises and the final conclusion and the connection between the two?
Yeah, sure. I got you 100%. Um, You want just the whole syllogism together? You want me just to explain, reiterate?
So starting at the point that the mind is immaterial, okay, and that we can reduce the whole entire universe to the mind. Okay.
So
Connect those sets of facts to the creation of a God, and can you define God functionally within this debate?
Yeah. So God is going to be the mind behind the creation of the universe, right? It's going to be the necessary metaphysically necessary existence that grounds all of reality's existence. It's going to be mind. So I guess I'll get into my argument because you seem like you're waiting.
Because I asked you two questions, you answered one. I'm waiting for the second answer.
Oh, my bad. I didn't hear what you said.
So I said, can you, starting from accepting that the mind is immaterial and that immateriality, that physical dualism is not necessary, right?
Okay.
Can you restate the syllogism? Because I want to be able to respond to your syllogism. Also, I don't want you reading off a PDF. Like, that's not helpful. So I just want to actually interact with you. Can you just restate?
You said not to read off a PDF.
1 second. Are you going to allow me to ask my question? Otherwise, you are not welcome on this debate stage.
Okay, sure. You're free to do that. I just thought you were asking.
Stop speaking then.
Okay, well, you don't have to be disrespectful.
You are interrupting me consistently.
Well, you also interrupted me, so where's the courtesy?
I'm asking you a question.
Sure,
I allow you to answer it, and I allow you to give a very, very long answer to it. So, as I was saying, can you restate your syllogism starting from the secondary conclusion, right? Which is that mind dualism is unnecessary and that the immateriality of the mind is true.
Okay. This is the conclusion 1. Mind is not reducible to matter. Premise 3. Substance dualism is unnecessary. If it's unnecessary, the best possible explanation for all things, because it can be reduced across the board, all is mind. Conclusion 2. Do you understand?
Continue speaking.
Okay, I assume you want me to explain.
No, I don't want you to explain. I want you to continue the syllogism.
The syllogism is oh, you want the conclusion? Yeah, I got you. Well, I guess the end result. So if all is mind, right, it follows that there is a governing mind that brings us all contingent minds limited after its existence to experience and operate in reality.
Say that again. Say that sentence again. You cut out for a second.
Yeah, no problem. So I said, if all is mind, it follows that there's a governing mind that brings us all contingent mind, limited matter into experience to operate in reality.
Still, it brings all contingent minds in limited matter into reality. Can you say it slightly slower, as if you're not reading off?
Okay. So, I don't know why you want me to repeat myself 1,000 times, but
because genuinely, I don't think a single person watching this could type the sentence you just said. And if I'm going to respond to it, I need to hear it. So I'm not going in circles. I'm trying to hear the words so that I can understand them that you are saying.
Okay, sure, I got you. So if all is mind, it follows that there is a governing mind that brings us contingent minds into reality to experience and operate.
Okay. Wonderful. Can you justify that it follows that there's a governing mind from the fact that the mind...
Yes. Well, then we're going to get to the start of the universe, and basically, do you have contentions with that we can't have infinite regresses?
Oh, yeah, we can get to infinite regresses. Can you justify to me the impossibility of an infinite regress?
Well, you just presuppose it's an impossibility.
I haven't presupposed anything. You're the one making the argument. It is on you to justify to me, right, the truth of your claim, which was that this necessitates the other thing.
No one said necessitate. We're dealing with probability. The evidence that I have doesn't necessarily derive the conclusion. That's more.
Okay, necessarily drives the conclusion. So your conclusion, but wait, no. You said that the existence of an immaterial mind necessitates a governing mind.
No, it's an implication. Do you know what an implication is? When you have something
literally
that
just said necessitate. Implication, an implication is in common speech and also academic speech equivalent to necessity.
That's not true, because the premises are contingent on the previous premises that form those premises to entail the implication. So there's no necessity. Even when you're having a deduction, usually the premises are formed inductively, so it's not
So can you
necessary.
describe to me the difference between an implication and a necessitation? So typically premises necessitate a conclusion.
That's in a deduction. Usually, broadly considered that people think deductions necessitate some things. If both premises are true in a deduction, right, it necessitates something. Yes, but
Yeah.
usually, right, the premises used to, I guess, form a deduction are usually formed inductively, which I'm not making a deduction right now. I'm making an induction, which just applies probability, not necessity.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It wasn't clear that you're making an inductive claim and not a deductive claim because you actually haven't set out how the relationship between the premises and the conclusion. So, can you justify to me that the relationship between if I accept the previous premises, right, for the point of this discussion, right, because they're much less interesting to discuss than the beginning of the universe. If I accept that the mind is immaterial, okay, how does the mind being immaterial imply, or what was the term? I forget. But how can we inductively suggest, right, that a governing mind exists?
A governing mind. Yeah, so this is why I wanted to go to the whole infinite regress and what does it lead to. Are you aware of the PSR, principle of sufficient reason?
I want you to make your argument.
Well, bro, I need to know how to move forward. If you don't know what something is,
I just want you to make the argument that you're making. I haven't read a whole lot of the academics on this specifically.
Okay, that's 100% fine. I'm not trying to ego you, bro.
No,
anyways,
the general rule, I don't assume you are. The general rule is even if I have read it, right, which I've read certain parts of apologetics, right? I know the general discussion on infinite regress and such. I want you to make the argument that you're making so that we can actually discuss what you're saying rather than pointing to papers and such. So make your point.
Okay, so do you want me to proceed with this whole entire debate as if you know what I'm talking about? Like everything, I won't ask you about anything?
No, I want you to proceed with this debate making what a layman could understand. Because that's how I argue, right? We're speaking to an audience, right? And attempting to be understood by the audience. So I speak such that a person, even with zero knowledge on the topic, except for general understanding of English and perhaps an expectation of academic verbiage, right, could understand the concepts that you're describing.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fair enough.
That's the standard that we're setting here, yeah.
Sure, we can do that. So basically what I'm saying is everything that we observe has a sufficient reason. Sufficient reasons just say that for every single event or action, right, there is a reason for why it occurred, right? Because all events has a cause, right? This leads to the beginning, right? If the sufficient reason principle holds true, it leads to the beginning of all sufficient reasons, right? So if there's a causal chain of sufficient reasons, right, then that would lead to the beginning of the universe, right? The universe requires a sufficient reason. That's how the principle of causality works.
Okay. And this logically leads to the question of infinite regress.
Infinite regress.
Right. As to the question of infinite regress, can you justify to me the impossibility of infinite regress?
Okay. This may be just a semantic issue, but it's not an impossibility, right?
Oh, the unlikelihood of infinite regress or something like that.
Sure. So the unlikelihood of regress is that, let me give you an example. Time progresses, right, relatively at a relative speed, but not an infinite speed, right? So meaning if I say I'm going to give you a high five after I do an infinite amount of push-ups, then you'll never get that high five because an infinite amount of things have to occur while time passes at a finite speed. So, right, if an infinite things can't occur, right, then it follows that there will be a beginning.
So no one, yeah, I agree. But relative, right, things happen within infinity. This is the whole entire discussion. Is time is relative. The reason I know time progresses is because I was at a certain point in time at a different point in time. Okay? So if we actually take how we get a derivative understanding of time, it only exists in a relative sense as far as we can tell. We have no absolute perspective to justify an absolute understanding of time. I don't need to justify that I will get the high five at the end of the infinity, right? All I need to know is that I will go from having done 10 push-ups to having done 20 push-ups. And that is a progression within an infinity. So the whole, what the suggestion you're making, right, against infinity is against a suggestion that we can't even have justification to make. Is that I don't think we have evidence for like an absolutist version of time. All we have evidence for is a relativist version of time, which I don't, which is perfectly well allowed within an infinite regress.
No. So yeah. So a relativist perspective on time, right? Time is relative to the point where you are inside of our space-time continuum, right? Nothing, no matter where you are in the universe, can progress at an infinite amount of speed, meaning an infinite amount of time, an infinite amount of seconds cannot occur. And by the way, I will say, from the time that you're doing 10 push-ups to 20, you said that's technically an infinity. Well, no,
Not what I said.
technically
No,
not.
no. I didn't say.
Okay, clarify.
I said that it was acceptable within an infinity. So it's like that. That does have like that's the example of relative time within an infinity.
Well, when I mean by like an infinity, I mean like a mathematical infinity. I don't mean like something invisible in and of itself. Because that also
I didn't. That's not my. No, I'm not making like a Zeno's paradox comparison. We could discuss a Zeno's paradox comparison, but I'm not making a Zeno's paradox comparison.
okay. Well, if you're not saying that, then I definitely don't think Zeno's paradox is something we should get into. Um,
We can talk about
so
it later. It's an interesting contention, but the relative time contention is more relevant because it has to do with like epistemically where we get the concept of time, which is an experience of time within time.
yeah. So like regardless of time being like relative, right, to where you are inside of space time, we know and we have never seen anything infinite. Well, why is that? Why haven't we seen? Why have we seen finite, but we've never observed infinite? And I think it's simple, right? Because infinite has not been able to occur. That's why we theorize beginnings, the Big Bang. Do you accept the Big Bang, by the way?
Do I accept the Big Bang in like the scientific sense? Yes, I do accept the Big Bang.
Okay.
The Philbro discussion that we may have is going to be a little different, but we accepting the Big Bang, take that for what I actually mean by it. But also, the reason we haven't observed an infinite is because we also haven't observed, like in this sense, we haven't observed a beginning either, or an end, right?
A
Like
beginning?
not within the context of what we're talking. We've never seen matter created or destroyed, right? We've seen it change state. So in the context that we're talking about, yeah, we've seen things that we can only conclude are eternal. So the thing is basically all of our phenomenal proof would suggest that things are in fact eternal. And it would suggest in fact a infinite regress, a existence of us along an infinite timeline. And that our experience of time is merely a comparison to a previous time in an infinite timeline.
Well,
So I don't think we've observed infinity, right? Not because of a lack of an existence of one, right? But because to observe infinity would be to mark it by its ends, which it doesn't have any.
well, I don't well exactly know how you could directly infer um infinite. Maybe a potential infinite, but like let's say I'm trying to infer that the number 20 exists, but I only have like a climbing like 15 the number 15 but still climbing. Um yeah, it's a potential 20, right? Because all I
Yeah.
can see is just like the 15. But
It's an
that
inference.
doesn't mean that, like, what happened?
It's an inference. It's
But
a continuation of the observed pattern.
well, yeah, I can understand what you're saying.
So
But
it's
when
an
you're
inference, yeah.
comparing something like finite, um, the observation of the finite, right, is only going to extend to the finite, because no matter what you try to draw, like let's say I see like the number like a googolplex, a really high number, right, and I'm trying to infer something larger from that. This can just be true under the frame of analysis that you're conducting it under. So you made certain observations, right, but that could just be true under the frame of analysis that you're conducting it under. It doesn't really say the truth of the matter outside, because it just could be a bigger number but still finite.
I don't think I've really followed the relevance of this.
I guess I can draw it over. I'm saying you're trying to make an inference, am I right?
Uh, no. I'm suggesting that an alternative understanding of the observations is valid. I'm disputing your conclusion that infinite regress is impossible
Well, I think,
on the basis of an alternative understanding of infinity.
yeah, my bad for cutting you off. But so the thing is, I do think sufficient reason principle does actually bring things into existence. Um, so are you? Actually, I'm not gonna ask it. I'm just gonna be like, so there we have things that are logically equivalent to themselves, right? So let's say you have like a chair right next to you, right? The amount of atoms that is composed of that chair in that specific place, right? That that group, that body, and that those spatial coordinates are going to be logically identical to itself, right? So what is causation? It's just the change in energy. So let's say this chair is like split in half, or the chair loses an atom, right, due to like some sufficient reason, right, under the PSR. Then that means that it's taking something that was previously existing, which is a logical identity, and it's shifting it, it's changing it. Meaning it's taking something that exists, right, and I guess destroying the previous existence and creating another. So the sufficient reason principle does actually create things into existence. It doesn't just extend purely to just the shift in matter and energy. It changes
But once again,
logical
you're not
identity.
like this isn't really anything I'm contesting. That wasn't my contest to your claim. My contest to your claim was that your principle successfully proved that actually your principle wasn't even the relevant quality. Um, what I suggested was that you didn't sufficiently show that an infinite regress was unlikely. Okay, you set out the possibility of an infinite regress. Yes. You set out an example. No, you set out the possibility of a universe not having an infinite regress. You set out an example of a finite regress. Okay. And the implications of that finite regress and the terms of that. But you didn't actually describe to me why an infinite regress, right, is impossible.
Well, I'll tell you. And I'll actually tell you why. I guess this is gonna go over to like the whole mind isn't material. So sufficient reason principle, um, I guess cause and effect only applies to the material, because cause and effect is literally just the change in energy. The mind
Wait,
isn't
cause and
energy,
effect only applies to the change. You can generalize it to change in state that would apply outside of the physical.
but state implies.
Certainly, your mind can change in state.
Hmm. I don't want to be dishonest and disagree with that. I guess that's a fair, I guess, way to put it. But I guess the way I'll summarize my point before I get off is we have observed, uh, from what we know, as the Big Bang, which is the consensus of the beginning of the universe, right? So for you to postulate something that is now contradicting that and saying, well, that's not the beginning, that is just Wouldn't you say that's just contradictory to the consensus?
So that is the consensus of the beginning of what can be observed, right?
Yeah.
But that's not to say that what can be observed is an equivalent statement to what is, right? Is either a statement of extraordinary human hubris or a misunderstanding of what's being claimed. There's a difference between what we can currently observe and what is. And all that we're saying with the Big Bang is that at a previous point in time, the universe was so small that we can't look beyond it in past. Okay, and it was the precipice to a massive expansion of space-time. But that's not to say that there was ever a point at which space-time, at which that massively small thing didn't exist, or that massively small thing was always in that state.
Yeah. So, what I'm saying is that your interpretation of the Big Bang kind of postulates something outside of what we've observed. Wait, you're not affirming infinite regress. I don't want to strawman you.
But I'm not directly affirming, like, you're the one proposing it, right? So I'm just saying you don't have sufficient evidence to counter an infinite regress. Because your argument comments on the likelihood of a certain claim that is inherently commenting on the comparative likelihood of other claims, right? And I'm saying, right, an infinite regress is an ulterior claim. You need to sufficiently regard the infinite regress claim, and so I'm asking you to sufficiently regard the infinite regress claim.
Sure. Okay, I understand now. So, with the infinite regress and the start of the universe, going off a base, concluding that something is the beginning based off of what we observe is actually considered an empirical observation. So if I were to say, because we've observed, right, the beginning of the universe to be at this point, I'd actually be more justified in, I guess, accepting that or drawing that conclusion than to say that there's something infinitely before that.
Wait, but we've never, so beginning, okay? We've never observed it being the beginning. Because in order to verify it being the beginning, you must claim there was nothing prior to it. Right? You see how those are intrinsically related claims? If something is the beginning of a journey, there is nothing of that journey prior to it. Like, that's what that word means. So inherently, to say that it is the beginning, you must claim that there was nothing prior to it. And what I am saying is that science does not actually claim that there was nothing prior to it. It does not claim there was something, that it doesn't claim there was something prior to it, but it says we cannot prove whether it's agnostic to it. We do not have evidence to suggest it. I'm suggesting that, like, that lack of observational evidence, right? First of all, we can extrapolate backwards, right, based on the patterns we've seen in the universe thus far. If we extrapolate backwards, it seems natural that matter, just like every other type of matter, isn't destroyed or wasn't randomly created. So we can conclude that it did exist. But we don't have direct observational evidence of it. But what we certainly don't have direct observational evidence of is that it didn't exist.
Okay, so what you're saying right now is what you're kind of doing is you're pointing out the problems with induction, right? So if I've only seen white goose, I'm justified in drawing the conclusion that all goose are white. But if there was a black goose, right, that I haven't seen, despite me being justified, right, the conclusion I arrived at was actually wrong. So I would say, with my claim,
I don't see how I'm doing that.
Well, I would say you are, because
we've never no inductive evidence that would conclude it was the beginning. Like, actually, the only inductive evidence we have is that we've never seen any matter ever created or destroyed. So if we're going to draw an inductive conclusion, it's going to be that matter was not created or destroyed at this point either.
Well, I guess to respond to the first thing, I would say you rather are pointing out the problems with induction, because you're just essentially postulating this extra possibility to negate what I'm asserting when I'm saying that there's probability with what I'm trying to entail.
Yeah, so I was saying we don't have direct observational evidence, but applying the inductive evidence, this would be the conclusion.
Well, yeah, applying the induction. What are you talking about for me or for your claim?
I'm not really making a direct claim. I'm saying if we apply inductive evidence to the claim in context that you're giving, right? We don't suggest that it's like a beginning in any existential sense of the word.
So if you walk towards like I guess if you're on like a high place, right? You're on top of a building, and then you walk towards what looks like the end. Are you not justified in saying that that is the end because it looks like the edge of the building?
How do you know what an end looks like?
Well, obviously we know what end is because
But how do you know what an end looks like in this context? That's the thing. Is you're suggesting that this looks like the beginning, but I'm saying and then the consequence from that is you're saying, well, it looks like there was nothing prior to it. Well, I'm saying, what are you saying it looks like? How are you, like, it's really relevant to say, oh, well, we're walking towards and it looks like an end. Well, what does that mean? How are you even drawing the conclusion that it
Yeah.
looks like an end?
So let's say we have a pattern, right? Black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white. And then we have something that is different from this pattern. It's not a color that we've seen before. Maybe it's red, but we didn't know it was red. Saying that that's the end of the black and black, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white would be a valid conclusion because you're saying, okay, well, I know what this looks like, right? There's nothing beyond that that I can observe.
Yep.
So the baseline assumption would just be like, oh, it ends there, boom.
Okay, yeah, but the thing is the Big Bang is not like that. The Big Bang is just a continuation, like, the Big Bang is just a smaller version of the universe is very small, okay? And the only I'm saying there's basically no epistemic relevance of it, right? It is just very small. And the relevance is not epistemic, the relevance is evidentiary. Is we have evidence from every point in time from here to the Big Bang. Just after the Big Bang, we don't. So all we can run off is inductive evidence, right? But we can run on inductive evidence in all the other cases. It's not the end of a pattern. It's just the end of an evidentiary pattern. I don't see what you're suggesting.
I guess you're saying it's okay to do this in other situations, but not in this situation. So I guess what I could say to you or ask you, what is the symmetry breaker between like a normal induction and what I'm attempting to do right here?
I'm not saying induction is invalid in this case. I'm saying the conclusion of induction in this case is not what you're saying the conclusion of induction is. I'm not attempting to. No symmetry breaker is necessary because I'm not trying to break symmetry. I'm maintaining symmetry. I'm saying apply induction in good faith. And applying induction in good faith would not conclude what you're concluding.
I feel like I got my point across. I'm gonna let somebody else go up. It was good talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, see you, bro.
Okay, we got one person in guest requests. Send more guest requests so we can do it. Follow up here because I do this forever. And yeah, really appreciate all of you. Slay the day. Cash App in bio, Patreon in bio. Patreon really, really helps. That's consistent income and makes me be able to do what I want to do in life. Hello.
Hey, David. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, about.
Where are you from?
Well, I live in North Carolina, but what did you send a guest request to
Nice.
disagree on?
Just be. I know you're looking for debates and stuff, but I'm really just coming in to be more educated on your point of view, and maybe I can like change what I might find, deep inside, and maybe change some of my views, if we want to collaborate a little bit. And so, what is your definition of a feminist? Like,
A person who believes that gender should not be considered in social or legal conceptions.
Okay. So, and we're talking about ground level there, right? It's like we're not talking about equality of outcome, but we're talking about ground floor. Everyone, like men and women, should be equal.
I don't find the distinction incredibly helpful, but I mean, fundamentally, social legal considerations is the considerations that society and the legal system make. So they would be primarily, ground floor, I guess, because they don't yet interact with the individual.
So it's like man and a woman interview for the same job. They have the same qualifications.
They should
Who do you
get it
hire
at
in
the
that
same
instance?
rate.
Okay, agreed. That's where we find our common ground. Okay. Uh, I just kind of wanted to point out is you have pro-choice and anti-death penalty. Does that mean that you are completely for a non-violent society? Because that's some of those hintings of like just completely non-violent society. So you can't have abortions, you can't have murder by trial.
How
Is
would
that
what
is
I
that
said
fair?
suggest that? Also, like, laws existing are violence. So, I mean, I support some laws existing. I just don't support these particular usages. So these are two atomized instances where I happen to not support violence. Of course, I support some form of violence against murderers. Put them in jail. That's a form of violence. It's just a justified.
Right, because we can agree that even violence can be verbal. It doesn't have to be physical.
I don't see how that's relevant, but yes, that is true.
Yeah, because we're just trying to get full definition. Um, so I've heard the term atheist and agnostic. Could you describe to me what like those two agnostic atheist is? I'm not familiar.
So I observe there's no evidence for a god, and therefore I don't believe in one. So
Okay.
agnostic, I observe there's no evidence for one. Atheist, and therefore I don't believe in one.
Hmm. Okay. Um, trans men are men. Okay, so we're not talking like biological, we're talking what they choose to label themselves as.
We're talking an accurate sociological understanding of the terms.
And the other topic,
Anti-death penalty? What?
like, what's your reasoning behind the anti-death penalty? It's like,
Well, I don't believe in
do
unnecessarily killing people.
come again? I'm sorry, I
Well,
stepped
I
all
don't
over
believe in
you.
unnecessarily killing people.
Right, so you don't believe that just because they committed an action, they deserve death.
Well, it's not really about deserve. It's about what's best for society. And I don't think it's best for society to unnecessarily kill people.
Right, so what's the alternative? That's
I mean, it depends case by case, but I mean, the alternative that I point to, right, to compare at least, is life in prison. So I see very, very little benefit of doing death rather than life.
But here in the States, our prisons are so crowded. It's like, what do we do? Do we try to rebuild them? And what do we do
Well,
there?
if the issue is funding, right, the death penalty costs more than life in prison. So
So instead of making financial resources go to that, should we be building more sustainable prisons?
oh God, no, there are better answers to the over incarceration issue in America. But I'm saying if the argument you're making is a financial one and a resource allocation one, right, then death penalty doesn't make any sense.
Right. I'm just trying to find an alternative. Is what do we do about that?
What do you do about overcrowding in prisons?
Yeah.
The best answer is to actually solve the problem, which is over incarceration. You reduce sentencing rates.
Even for murder? Or just for petty theft, and then they
And
fill
like
the
drug
slot.
offenses and like one-time offenses, like a huge amount of
Oh,
problems.
right
Yeah.
on, right on, right on. I agree. I mean, no one should spend 20 years in prison for a plant that was God given on this earth, right? Like,
Yes.
okay. Are we at your last topic? Oh, just your Twitter. Oh, I might write that down though. What do you talk about over at your Twitter? No.
I mainly shitpost against PragerU, so
That's fun. I like it.
it's a good time.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I appreciate the conversation. I just want to know a
Absolutely.
little
Well,
bit.
appreciate you coming up.
Yeah. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Hey, same. Right.
Very
Why is it
respectable.
your favorite color? I always find it interesting.
It's a good color. I don't know. It's like
Looks good on cars, looks good on suits, looks good on clothes.
true. Well, I appreciate you coming up. I'm gonna move on to the next guest probably, but appreciate it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, good night. Well, good morning.
Keep on sending likes. I'm probably gonna go to bed soon, obviously. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go to bed. Much love, much love, much love. Love, live, love, live, love, live, love. Okay. Slay the day. See y'all. If you like what I do, obviously Patreon. That helps a lot. Thank you. Okay. Peace out.